Cross my fingers. There you go.
First time. All right, welcome. Let's go ahead and get started with the Pledge of Allegiance.
I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
Thank you very much. I've asked Commissioner Daly to give a thought or legislative prayer, and so I will turn the time over to him.
Great. So I was just telling Shaylin I feel bad because we're going to take a pause on the history of Centerville for just a little bit of time, which I know is fun to talk about the history of Centerville, but we're going to do something else for a second. I was reading recently, this comes from Strong Towns, and it's an article called The Connectedness of Our Housing Ecosystem, which I thought was an interesting topic. And what it mainly talks about is that you can't just, housing is not just isolated into individual little parts, it's a whole ecosystem. And what it mainly talks about is specifically a study done by economist Evan Mast of the Upjohn Institute, where he went through and he analyzed what he essentially calls, I can't remember what he exactly called them, but they're essentially housing chains. And so the idea is, the premise of this thing is we need more housing, right? And we've talked about this before. What do we do with, how do we get more housing, more affordable housing? And he says that you can't just focus in on one type of housing and expect that that's going to solve the whole problem, because everything is connected and related, right? So the study that he does is he talks about what he called it market rate housing, but essentially what it is it's high-end housing. And so if you build high-end housing, somebody's going to move into that high-end housing, and chances are they're going to move out of some lower-level housing and to do that, which will open up some supply in that lower level. And there's a connected chain that kind of goes through that whole process to do it. So building 100 new luxury units leads 65 and 34. So let's break this down a little differently. 65 people out of below median, and 34 people out of bottom quintile income neighborhoods to move up, right? And so when you do that, it creates that new, kind of changes the way that supply and demand works in those lower ones. And then this has also been supported by a study done at Berkeley by a couple of folks there, and they said that 2 new market rate homes were roughly equivalent to 1 affordable home in terms of reducing the displacement of low income people. So kind of the bottom line is that I think that we need to make sure that we're thinking about housing as the whole thing. And I think, we've talked a little bit about this before, how there are people within Centerville who live in maybe a medium whatever affordable housing or medium priced housing that would like to move up and like to stay in Centerville and do that. And so maybe there's just not enough demand for that. And it's interesting to think about it, how that's all connected and how it all kind of works together. So that's kind of my long thought about housing ecosystem. So we'll leave it with that because that was kind of long.
Yeah, so. I really like it. Thank you. I would love it if you could share that article with the Planning Commission. I would love to read it.
You bet.
I think that this housing issue is a very complicated one.
Yeah.
So there's no silver bullet on any front.
Yeah.
Yeah. Really good thought. Thank you very much, Kevin.
Mm-hmm.
Okay, turning to the first item on our agenda, we have a conceptual site plan amendment for Arby's gas station. So I'll turn the time over to staff.
Thanks, Chair Heyman, members of the commission. As indicated to you, this is initially came in as a site plan amendment for the Arby's gas station. That is the gas station, not the sandwich shop. Although you can buy sandwiches probably there too. This is located on Parish Lane, and it is also located within the Parish Lane Gateway Design Standards. And specifically this amendment, they're proposing some canopy changes You can see in your attachment the existing canopy on the top and the new proposed canopy on the bottom. This was a issue that was discussed by the Planning Commission in the past, and so therefore did not qualify for an administrative approval at a staff level. So it has been bumped up to the Planning Commission for conceptual review, for you to discuss the matter and give any directives to the applicant. And if there are changes, he would prepare those final plans and come back to you for your final approval. So this is more of feedback and review and compliance with the ordinance. Just by way of history that I recall, as well as found in the staff reports, the Parish Lane Design Guidelines have a higher standard of design. You're probably familiar specifically with like the quick clack was a fairly recent discussion in that design standard. In the past, well, the code says the materials and color selections need to be harmonious and compatible within the Parish Lane Design Guideline area, which is from parish to legacy on parish, or from main to legacy on parish. And we bring up just a couple of quick points. Mackenzie was researching the past elements and tried to list out for you just a quick snapshot of other projects that had a discussion, particularly in the coloration. As I recall in the past, projects, Grease Monkey, Sonic to some degree, the In-N-Out Burger, which was counted in the Parish Lane area, the Quick Quack that was counted in the Parish Lane Gateway area. Bright, bold, primary type colors have been a little bit frowned upon in the sense of using in mass and bulk. And so there have been efforts like Dairy Queen. If you look at there's a very visual top accent to the Dairy Queen. Those were muted from the primary colors. And although you see some blues and the copper, you have the orange and the blue with Dairy Queen, you see that those colors were muted. So those are some examples of discussing the use of primary colors. There's a separation of the use of primary colors with signing. What's in the context with a sign and counted in the sign area has been regulated by the sign ordinance, and we don't regulate the content. But if it occurs outside in the building design, we've had a substantial amount of discussion through the years. So in looking at the Arby's, originally they had the earth tone colors, and the tans and the beiges were a part of the original canopy, and you see that present on the existing canopy, and that's what was specifically approved by the commission. So it's coming back to you for these canopy changes. Staff is somewhat in between on where this lands in prominence of concern with coloration, because there's no specific thing about primary colors. We just have a history of being careful about how much and what scale the primary colors occur. In this case, they're moving to a more neutral color, the gray and the whites, and also they have an accent stripe at the top of the canopy. And so it became for us of trying to measure it. Substantial areas of coloration, the commission has weighed in and toned down those colors. I did bring, let's see, I don't know if I still have it. I did bring a Google Earth. There's the existing canopy, at least whenever this picture was taken. And let's see, let's go out and go look at the Sonic site here. Our debate on how to weigh in, right across the street from Arby's is the Sonic. And you do see the Sonic sign is yellow, the top area is faded now a little bit, but that was muted. The top feature at the column was muted. But if you look at the canopy, you can see that there was still some acceptance of some primary colors on the little ends of the canopy. So when we're looking at Arby's gas station, we see the stripe is an accent feature instead of a primary feature of the canopy. And so we're not in our opinion, saying we're out of bounds with the compatibility. So from our view, an accent stripe, something that's lower key, doesn't seem to dominate the design of a building. And in other codes unrelated to Parish Lane, Shorelands Commerce Park, we talk about accents and the use of it not being a primary, and it's a secondary feature. We don't say that in Parish Lane specifically, so the question is does this reach a level of concern on the accent stripe? And staff is remaining that it's more accent than it is a primary design, but we have had that discussion with the commission in the past, and staff has not always won that debate and argument, so I'll leave it for you to debate. One thing that's important, just simply by code requirement, see the new Phillips 66 sign? If you look at the existing one, it matches the size of the canopy. This was discussed back then. The Phillips 66 sign protrudes above the canopy, and by our sign ordinance, that's prohibited. So there's no discretionary value being made in that. Anything projecting above a wall line is considered prohibited. And the concept is to not move towards rooftop signs and signs projecting above buildings. That's frowned upon in the sign ordinances of the city. So from the standpoint of staff, it's simple in its debate, but in the sense of the number of items, but I think you have two. Is the accent stripe a concern for its primary use color? The applicant's bringing a color board for you to see, and the sign is just simply needs to be resized in some manner to meet the sign ordinance. So those are the two issues.
Thank you very much, Corey. Any questions for staff?
Yeah, Corey, the 7-Eleven down the street, when that was redone, was that during the period that the Parish Lane design guidelines were in place?
Not during, that I recall, during my time here.
Neither with the Chevron?
Yeah, they're the Chevron.
So both of those
Pre-exists
could
the
be grandfathered into
2003.
that? Thanks.
Any other questions for staff?
So the pole sign, I don't know if there's an existing and proposed. I couldn't really tell the difference except for the one image was bigger than the other. And then it said the poles were going to be painted gray. Is that the only difference?
My understanding, that's the only difference. I think there's a red stripe on the existing pole on the lower base. You can kind of see it there. I don't know.
There's a different illustration of that, Corey, isn't there? If you scroll down.
Oh, so the red stripe is just going to disappear.
You know, I thought poor Corey, he gets these plans and he has to go scan them in or make someone else scan them in.
I
That one.
Yeah, you
think
can
it's
kind of
fine.
see the red base.
Yeah.
So if I understand right, you're proposing to redo the canopy, put in new fuel dispensers, and kind of repaint the sign, kind of, right? The big,
Yeah. So how this came about is.
Wait, actually, I'm gonna ask you to hold on. Right now, we're gonna be asking questions for
Sorry.
staff, and then we will open it up and allow you to come speak.
that,
It's all good. It's all good. Any other questions for staff?
Yeah, Corey, my question for you is just, do we find ourselves in a situation where do we get into a gray area with the whole accessory versus primary and?
Yes, all the Parish Lane says is it has to be harmonious and compatible with the surrounding development. So they wanted some consistency. And the use of primary colors has been a point of debate in past approvals. And how extensive, I mean, you look at the Sonic and the debate on the end caps didn't come into play in the debate, but the feature on top of the column wall of the drive-through came into play.
So with the Sonic though, if they had wanted to put those primary colors on the main building, that's easier to say no because that's the primary building.
It just says all development, so you have everything. Canopies is accessory structures, main buildings. They're all part of the materials and color and harmonious discussion.
But wait, didn't I read in here? Where did I read this? gas station dispenser canopy should be considered a secondary use that does not need to comply with the muted color scheme. But, so, I guess let's back up, a couple questions then on that. If they wanted to paint the building, the convenience store building, with that bright red, primary color red, we'd say no, because that's...
There's historic precedents that would be turned down.
But couldn't you also make an argument that the primary use of a gas station is the gas pumps and maybe the canopy?
You could, but from our view is that the service station building itself is primary, the canopy is an accessory unit to the gas station. Now, you could reverse that and say the canopy is the primary building and the convenience store is the accessory use, or you could say they're all primary buildings. There's no definitive line. It will say buildings and then accessory buildings. So what qualifies and constitutes an accessory building?
But whether it's a building or an accessory, either way, it has to harmonize with the existing surrounding development.
That's what the Parish Lane's trying to say.
Corey, as you were analyzing this issue, what weight did you give to the original Planning Commission's approval as they were looking at this? They required, as a condition of building this, that the cut sheet for the fuel canopy depicts a Pueblo tan, replacing the brighter red color presented during the conceptual site plan review, or the design shall use a two-tone canopy color scheme consisting of tan and brown tones. So as I read the prior Planning Commission, a large part of this approval was the fact that this canopy was going to be browns or tans,
Correct.
rather than the gray and the white.
Correct. And they found that harmonious. That's what they wanted, to get away from the red.
Okay.
And is that why this is here mainly, is because we're changing that one?
Correct. Which I'm not authorized to substitute my opinion for the commission.
Got it. So we need to decide whether what they have proposed is harmonized with the existing surrounding development, or whether we believe, as the prior Planning Commission did, that it needed to be more of the tan and brown tones.
Right.
Or something else, I suppose. Okay. Any other questions for staff?
This might be a question for the applicant, but do you happen to have the, like, number color? There you go.
Paint color?
There we
Yeah,
go.
we'll take a look at that in a second.
Awesome. Because it's hard, sometimes it's hard to know the actually Pantone color and what that red looks like, but obviously we will see it right here.
Any other questions for staff before we invite the applicant to step forward? No? Okay, now we would love to invite the applicant to step forward and speak to this matter. If you'll just pick either mic, it doesn't matter which, and just state your name so that you can introduce yourself to us for the record.
So my name is Brad Randall. I'm one of the owners of the Arby's convenience stores. So how this came about is Phillips 66 and most of the major oil companies, every so often, every 15, 20 years or whatever, they do a re-image. And so they're requiring us to meet their upgraded image standards. And that's the pictures that you see up there. If I could, I took some pictures of some of the surrounding businesses. There's Maverick down there. Their canopy is mostly red. We have 7-Eleven that has orange and red accent stripes. Chili's, the building is mostly red. AutoZone, an orange color. Dairy Queen has the blue. And also Little Caesars has red and yellow striping on there as well. So, I mean, we see this as an accent stripe. This is the actual piece of the actual fascia that will be up on there. So this is going to sit 16 to 19 feet up in the air. This will be about 19 feet up in the air. So anyway, we would just respectfully request that this be approved, and that way we can match the Phillips requirement.
So that is the actual piece that's going to go up. Because as I look at this picture, the picture looks like it's pretty white stripe. So the picture looks like it's pretty red and then pretty white and then pretty
Is that titanium gray?
I don't know what the color is. I mean, you're welcome to look.
I mean, I'm guessing because it says something like, this will be painted titanium gray.
Yeah, the pole
Yeah.
I bet that pole is
Yeah,
that,
the
because
pole
that
is
looks
a real light
like that.
gray.
Okay.
Yeah.
I'm gonna have you, just for purposes of those viewing at home, I'll have you step back to the mic,
Okay.
just because they can't hear it if you're
Okay.
not next to the mic. Any other questions for the applicant?
Was the comment that Corey made about the sign, the Phillips 66 sign on the canopy clear to you?
Yes.
Any concerns with bringing that into
I've talked to
compliance?
Phillips, and they will adjust that and not have that stick up above the canopy. But I do believe Mavericks sticks up above their canopy.
Any other questions for the applicant?
So I like that you have that color thing that we can see, but do you happen to know, like the number of the color, because primary colors, obviously, for the purpose of Parish Lane, are much more bold colors, and I appreciated examples that you gave, because I actually don't have a problem with that having a color on the top. I want us to make sure that we're consistent with, if you look at Chili's and all those different places, they're more muted colors. They're not like a bright.
Yeah, the Chili's on their building is more of a muted.
Yeah.
Yeah.
So-
But those canopy
But they do have color on the
colors are
canopy,
not-
yes.
Are not muted, but
Right, they do have color on the canopy, but it's
Yeah.
just a muted red or different things. So I'm wondering if there's, so if you don't have the number of the,
I mean, I don't know if it shows anywhere on there, the actual color.
Are these colors that were, as you're looking through those, are these colors that were dictated by Phillips?
Yes, yes, yeah. So they want, everything across the country to be uniform, and so, yeah, this is the color scheme that they came up with, so.
so like for Quick Quack, for example, they have a corporate color scheme that they like to stick to, which is a neon yellowy and a neon green. And they had an alternate pack that they were able to receive, permission from, because other places in the country were not allowing such bright colors. Have you looked into whether, Phillips has an alternate sort of muted color scheme at all?
At this point, they do not, so.
Any other questions for the applicant? If not, thank you very much.
Thank you.
This matter has been scheduled for a public hearing, so we'll take the opportunity to open the public hearing and invite any member of the public who wishes to speak to this matter to step forward. Seeing no one step forward, we'll close the public hearing. Any further discussion or debate on this one?
Questions for staff, if that's okay.
Please do.
Corey, the Dairy Queen was developed under the Parish Lane Design Guidelines, right?
Correct,
And the Maverick?
was not.
Maverick is not subject to that.
The Parish Lane Design Guides played an applicable role, but it's a plan development overlay and received a custom architecture for the whole
That's right.
Legacy Trails project.
AutoZone,
AutoZone is part of the old shopping center, so,
when they redeveloped, though, I assume they had to come to match code.
no, because they did not expand the building to 30% to come up to code.
Little Caesars,
Same.
same drill.
Same is in a non-conformity status.
Sorry, same for 7-Eleven.
Same for 7-Eleven
And Chevron.
and Chevron.
So the only example that I heard that was a bright primary color that was pretty evident was the Dairy Queen that was developed during the Parish Lane Design Guidelines, right?
And those are muted.
Those aren't bright.
Dairy Queen, Sonic, Chili's, those were all under
Yep.
the design, the
Correct.
Parish Lane, yeah.
One other quick question. It says that these colors need to be consistent with, is the phrase existing development along Parish Lane?
I don't remember if it says existing. I'd have to look up the code. I can pull it up unless you have it.
It says storyboard materials should harmonize with existing, surrounding development.
So it doesn't say that the storyboard colors should be harmonious with existing development developed under the Parish Lane Design Guidelines. It just says existing development. Did I understand that correctly, Lisa?
Well, it depends how you interpret that. I think you're adding your own interpretation.
Well,
That's
my interpretation
good
has never
attorney
been
answer right
wrong,
there.
so I
That's
don't know that. So, read that for me one more time then. Thank you.
The storyboard materials should harmonize with existing surrounding development.
I will defer to Lisa on interpretational questions, but I would argue that the intent of that statute is not to go backwards to allow for it to match other non-conforming uses, but that it would be to harmonize it with existing compliant buildings, right?
Yeah, I could see
I
it.
think that's what the purpose of that provision would be.
Yeah, I could see that. I would also argue, though, that it doesn't mean to disregard existing development, meaning if I think what you should, I think it's exactly what it says. I think it's what's existing, and as those storyboards come online, I think it would change what's existing, and you would see an increase. But I don't think I wouldn't interpret it to read disregard existing development.
So just curious, Logan, what would you equate this to, or what would you say this is harmonious with, or how does it?
Well, I think harmonious is a kind of an ambiguous word. It's a little bit of a unclear word, in my opinion, which is a tough one to weigh in on. Generally, I feel like the canopy, in my opinion, sticks out less, the proposed canopy, than even the muted colors on Quick Crack. Like Quick Crack has that big yellow thing, and even though it's muted, I feel like it pops a little more. And I would argue, to me, the same is the case with the Dairy Queen. And then obviously it's much less than some of the other existing sites like Chevron or the others. And frankly, I think that the canopy with just the one line on the top, God, I could swear that red was kind of earth tones anyway, but I'm qualifying all this, which when I walk out of the house, I have to ask my wife, does this match, honey? And then she lets me go, so.
I would argue that based on the language of the statute, it affords us a significant amount of discretion to determine what constitutes harmonizing with the existing surrounding development. Based on my review of the last planning commission, it looks like they felt pretty strongly that harmonizing meant using this two-tone canopy color scheme consisting of tan and brown overtones. So it appears to me that at least the last commission, when they were looking at this, when they were looking at whether it harmonized, they weren't looking with non-conforming uses, they were looking at what the intent of the parish guideline standards were. Whether we agree with that or not is another question, but I think that that is what the earlier planning commission was.
Yeah, and that's why staff struggled, because if you look at Sonic, you don't have tans on the canopies. But you do on the building. So our struggle was right across the street, you have tans and so forth on this building. Yes, it was restricted on the canopy at the time, but Sonic wasn't.
Canopies on Sonic are much smaller in diameter. I mean, I
True.
struggled as I read this report to even recall what the color of the canopies were on Sonic. The prominent feature in my mind as I think about the Sonic is the brown building. When I think of the Arby's gas station, I actually do think very much of that prominent tan canopy myself.
Yeah, and I kind of agree with that. Back to my conversation, or my question with Corey over here was, it's a gas station. The primary use is the gas pumps, and the canopy is kind of part of that. Sure, you could say that it's not necessary. You could pump gas in the, exposed or whatever you want to, but it's a primary feature of a gas station. That's what I really struggle
But let me
with.
give you just the argument against that, just so
Sure.
you have full debate. When you talk about primary buildings now, and let's just say you qualify the canopy as a primary building, now we have to start discussing whether you put the heavy base rock on it, whether you have the 25% articulation standards to the architecture. And so if you count that as a primary building, the canopy can't meet
Right.
those
It is a
primary
prominent
building standards. So
feature.
example is this was heavily debated, and I don't want to bring up pain for Brad, but see this right here on the side of the main building? That's the upgraded feature to meet the 25% articulation standard. So the focus was on the convenience store to meet the standards. The coloration just became the issue on the canopy building, and that's why I interpret it as a secondary use.
But for purposes of our analysis, it doesn't matter so much whether it's a primary use or a secondary use. The question is the canopy what they've proposed in terms of color schemes, does it harmonize with existing surrounding
Correct.
development? And that is a very discretionary term,
Correct.
as I review it, that allows us wide discretion to determine whether what they've proposed is harmonious. And I will offer my 2 cents for what they're worth. The red stripe, to me, concerns me an awful lot less than the gray color that they've proposed. I would have no concern if this was the two-tone with a red stripe around the top. That to me looks like an accent color. The thing that was jarring to me, and the question that I had, whether it was harmonious with the surrounding development, was the gray and what looks pretty white in this picture.
There's the debate.
Yep, it is. Any other comments? Does anybody have any concern with allowing them to take out the red stripe on the big sign?
To
Did anyone-
reduce that.
To reduce it? Did anybody even notice the difference besides Kevin? Because I didn't.
The big sign?
The
big
tall
sign,
sign.
the tall sign.
Scroll down, Corey.
I have no concerns at all with what they're proposing
On the
there.
base of it?
On the base of it, yeah.
Yeah, I didn't see.
I
I
can
mean,
hardly-
that took me hardly, it was,
Yeah.
I didn't know it changed.
And I'm assuming then that the gray on that sign would match one of those grays?
Yeah, I think it's this color gray here.
Yeah.
Okay.
Well, I'm happy to continue debating this one. It's a hard question because this one is going to come down to what we individually believe harmonizes with existing surrounding development.
Sorry, Shaylin, say it again.
Nope. I said, is there any further debate on this one? I think that it is a difficult question in as much as it comes down to whether we individually believe that what the color scheme that they've proposed harmonizes with existing surrounding development.
Absolutely. I have one more question. Corey, I can swear that when I look at it in the 2019 imagery on Google Earth, that it is currently white,
What's currently
the
white?
canopy. Yeah, I'm wondering if,
No, it's not.
Kind of,
it's tan, okay, that must be white.
my question for you, Corey, is, so the light, maybe this is a better question for the applicant. Is the canopy currently lighted, illuminated in the way that it will be illuminated?
The underlights are all that I know that exist.
There's nothing in the actual,
The sign.
not the,
The logo sign.
I know the logo sign has lighting in it, but I'm saying,
The fascia?
Like, is
yeah, the fascia, is the fascia going to be lit from behind that would be lit?
No.
No.
That's too thick. Okay, so it'll be lit from below and then the actual sign. Okay.
I'm still open for further discussion, or if we're discussioned out, then I'm willing to entertain a motion.
I personally like the upgrade of the new look versus the old look if it had a more muted red. Because I actually feel like with Quick Quack, with Dairy Queen, with some of these others, their original color scheme for their corporate is brighter, primary colors, and then they were able to get that muted grease monkey. So I think I don't have like a strong opinion that it has to be a brown or a tan necessarily. So I'm less concerned about the gray than you are. I think it looks great. I worry about a big bright red stripe a little bit.
yeah, it's funny because I'm a little different. I mean, the red grease monkey has a big red stripe just down the road. Chili's is red with bright red shadings over their windows. And so,
Those are considered signs, aren't they, Corey? The canopies on Chili's?
Yeah, they're different.
well, that cover their windows, are those considered signs? So there's like,
No, not unless they have the logo on it. And I
Oh,
don't
but-
remember when that came in.
Wasn't that what you, but didn't you say that one time about Sonic? When we were talking
Yeah.
about,
I know what you're
Quick
talking
Quack,
about.
yeah, that was considered signage.
And we couldn't regulate it.
That's the issue, is if they're willing to put certain amounts of elements into the sign package.
Still more.
So like example is In-N-Out Burger has a neon in a portion of their building that lights up their stripe. That's part of their sign package. So if it's included in the sign package, we discount it because we don't regulate the content of the sign package.
But then that goes against limits for the percentage of the building that can be signage and not, and.
Correct, they have to fall within that sign package amount in order to have,
Yeah.
because the lighting of the neon counts as a sign.
Yeah.
Anyone care to make a motion?
I'll make a motion that the planning commission accept the conceptual site plan to amend the July 2007 final site plan approval for 219 West Parish Lane, subject to directives 1 and 2 in the staff report and suggested findings A and B.
Second.
It's been moved and seconded. Any further discussion or debate?
One question of clarification. Number 2, Corey, on that suggested motion, the signs on the canopy shall be modified to comply with CCZ, blah, blah, blah. That's just in reference to the logo Phillips 66 to bring it so it doesn't protrude
Correct.
above the roof. That's what
Correct.
that's, okay.
What are your thoughts, Kevin?
I'll be honest with you, I'm struggling with this one. A lot of that is because of, I don't know, I'm struggling with the whole harmonious part of it. It's a pretty bright red and it really stands out, and I'm not sure how it harmonizes. I also worry about, we took a different approach with Quick Quack and said, look, you got to mute those colors, and they did, and I'm worried that, we're not consistent, and then where do we go from here? Next thing, we're getting all sorts of bright colors, and Quick Quack comes back and says, oh, we're going to redo our building. Bright yellow. I don't know.
Yeah, especially because Quick Quack was trying to argue that they weren't even on Parish Lane, but we were saying that they are visible from Parish Lane. This is definitely visible because it's
Yeah.
directly on Parish Lane.
If the purpose of the design guidelines are to push for a more uniform standard, I would argue that every time that we sort of step outside of that zone and allow something that is maybe close to the line or falls over the line, then we open the door for the next one to not be, and the next one to not be, and then we change the character of what the design guidelines are intended to achieve as a holistic whole.
I think that's right. You just slowly slips and you lose it over time. And I think it's easy to look at something and think about it in terms of the item itself. I mean, just to look at the canopy, you just look at the canopy. But if we're looking at harmonizing with existing and surrounding development, the canopy doesn't harmonize with the service station itself, in my view. It just doesn't. You've got more muted colors there, and that's not to say we're stuck in time, but if we are holding true to what we have here in our code and what we're looking at here, I don't think it's a match.
We do have a motion that's been seconded, so is there any further discussion or debate on the motion, which right now is to approve the color scheme proposed by the applicant? If not, we will go ahead and vote on the motion. So we'll start with you, Commissioner Workman.
I don't think it's a match. I'm a nay.
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 So the motion fails.
No, that's 3.
No, because we have 3
What
and
did you
3.
vote?
3 and 3, but if it's
Then
tied,
But I
Lisa
think
ties
you
the
still
vote.
have to vote.
then Lisa votes?
No.
It's a vote.
Nay.
It's hard because I like it, but it.
I like it too.
It looks good, but I'm off to say nay as well.
Aye.
Okay, the motion fails.
So, Corey, to be clear, though,
Well, it passed, it was just not to pass, it's a denial.
That's true. Okay, so we still, yeah, I guess that's true. It passed
As a denial.
As a denial,
Yeah.
yeah.
But to be clear, Corey, that action basically means that the conditions that were set in place in 2007 would still apply. And it still
Correct,
has
and
to-
so now the
They could
issue
come
is
back, right?
Can we create a new motion?
you certainly can give this is your chance to give the feedback for final. So
Okay.
that this is not an approval, this is acceptance and giving him the applicant direction. So now your issue is as proposed, it failed.
Right.
So it's the opportunity for you to give them new direction, and then the applicant will go back and consider whether or not that new direction or an alteration of that new direction to come back for final.
I'm not sure, based on the comments that we just heard, that we're on the same page as to what changes would be acceptable to a majority of the commission.
So that's why now you propose motions and battle it out.
Well, I would propose a motion,
Okay.
if that's okay. I would propose that the planning commission accept the conceptual plan to amend the July 2007 final site plan approval for 219 West Parish Lane, subject to directives. The signs on the canopy shall be modified to comply with CZZ 12.54.060.I, and that the color scheme for the canopy is adjusted to reflect a more muted color tone. And the applicant shall prepare and submit a final site plan amendment application as described by the zoning ordinance with suggested findings. Can I just like name the CZZ findings as my findings? Or just name it? Suggested reasons for action is the placement and design of signs should be compatible with the development project, and colors and materials should harmonize with existing surrounding development.
Second.
Discussion and debate on this one, and I'm going to start this off. What do you mean by more muted color tone?
Muting bright primary colors.
So you would be fine keeping the gray and just making a more muted red color?
I don't love the gray. It's bright in a sense, but I don't think it really conflicts with, I mean, gray is probably, of all the colors, one that kind of goes with a lot of things. And even though it's not necessarily brown, brown and gray to me, unless we had a strong design center like, you know, Park City or something that had like a specific brown that they were using, I'm not concerned as much about, it's more imposing, the gray is more imposing, but I'm not concerned that it's gray.
Does gray harmonize? That much gray harmonize with the surrounding buildings that comply with the parish lane guidelines?
Well, I'm not trying to design it myself. I'm not a designer, so from what they've shown me, it's enough. If there were able to be a muted primary color, it would be great if it had less gray, but I'm not like going to be the one that designs it, so.
Okay,
But
well, we do have a motion, so.
But back to what Isaac said, that it wouldn't even match the other buildings at that point, right? Because the other buildings are brown and tan, and like I'm talking about the gas station or the convenience store and the car wash. So you've got two brown and tan buildings, and you're going to put the gray.
That's true.
I mean, if you do the Google Earth tour of Parish Lane, there is a look, there is a theme in the Walmart Plaza, and it's not the gray, but all of these buildings from Walmart out to Parish Lane have a lot of earth tones to them, a lot of browns.
Yeah.
And then, I mean, it doesn't help that the stark contrast that you see in the Arby's buildings themselves. That might be one of the most tan brown buildings that kind of fits in with the theme of the other buildings. And so I would also question, I don't know, the utility of maybe muting the colors is the word we seem to like, when it's still is likely to not fit in. And I think it just maybe creates further issues down the road. I think the guidance ought to be to look at how you're trying to, look at what you're fitting in with and closer try to meet that.
The prior planning commission, the direction was that it be tan and brown tones. That was the guideline that they followed in erecting the canopy that's there.
Well, and additionally, if you look at the 13 directives from the previous planning commission, it sounds to me like they worked really hard to try and make sure that this fit in with that Walmart Plaza. Because they're talking about a pathway that's in the likeness of the pathway at Walmart Plaza development, pedestrian lighting. Anyway, it mentions a lot of stuff about, they're talking a lot about how this is going to fit in with the Walmart Plaza, right? And so that was an important part of it, and that kind of goes along with what Isaac was saying as well, that there is a theme there. And so I'm inclined to think, there was a lot of time and effort spent in 2007 to make this fit the theme, work with the theme, and kind of go with that look that we're hoping to get along there. And so let's leave well enough alone.
So would anyone propose an amendment to my motion about the gray?
Well,
Well,
you said more muted colors, so you either leave that open for the applicant to interpret it, or you amend and narrow it down.
if it were me drafting the motion, and I'm happy to vote on the existing motion that's there. The way that I would probably phrase it is that it needs to be a two-tone, going off of more of what the first planning commission had said, that it needs to be a two-tone canopy color scheme consisting of tan and brown tones, but that allows for a red accent.
Muted.
That's how I would do it too.
Why don't
'Cause,
you
you look
amend
at
it?
Chili's. Chili's has tons of red, and so the red doesn't bother me. It's just the gray, then what appears to be white, and then the red. I think
Yeah.
if they could just do the
Because
two tones.
Chili's
have-
doesn't stand out. It still fits the theme,
It's
even with all that red.
muted red.
But I don't have
Part of
any
it's
problem
muted
at all
red.
with that red.
Hmm?
That red does not cause me any concern, personally.
Yeah, but you're also looking at a 1 square foot section of that red. Would it
Yeah.
be different? Now, sure, it'll be 19 feet in the air, but would
Why
it be
don't you
different
make-
if it's?
No, I'm okay.
Why don't you make an
Even then, I
amendment
still don't mind,
That
but,
includes that, what you just said, that language.
I'll restate Becky's motion, but,
No, just amend, just make an amendment to it.
okay, so the amendment is to replace the language, that the canopy shall be of more muted color tone, and to say that the canopy design shall use a two-tone canopy color scheme consisting of tan and brown tones, with a red accent allowance.
A muted
A
red.
muted red accent?
I'll go with, if everybody likes muted, I'll go with a muted red accent.
What if one person doesn't like it? Would you?
Then make an amendment.
Yeah, that'll be the amendment.
I second that.
Okay. So now the motion on the table is to
Amend the motion.
amend the motion. So let's go ahead, and unless there's any further discussion or debate, let's vote on that so that we can put the motion on the table. We'll start down with you.
Aye.
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 Okay, so now the motion on the table is as has been amended, which is Becky's motion, except that now we're gonna do the two-tone canopy, tan and brown tones with the muted red accents. Do we want to talk about this one further? Are we ready to vote?
Yeah, sorry. Do we care about the other sign, if it's gonna be gray?
Oh, good point, because I assumed that the color would be the same as the carryover from the canopy, but
Did I specifically say the
I
canopy?
don't know that you did.
Yes, you did.
Okay.
So it would still cover what we've included.
Well, you probably
The
want to
canopy.
add
No, we wanna add
that.
the canopy and signage.
And signage.
So I will amend my motion to say canopy and signage.
Well, let's tailor, wait a minute.
Okay.
All signage.
Just
Let's say
the,
canopy and
the big signage
Pylon
next to the street.
Support, the support
pylon,
structure.
Support
pylon,
Structure
Support structure.
okay,
for the sign.
support structure for the sign. That's my amendment.
Becky, while we're going there, do we need to do that with the fuel dispenser? No, the fuel dispenser's going too far.
That's too far.
That's too
Second.
far.
Okay,
Okay, so are we all clear on the motion? The motion is for the two-tone canopy color scheme consisting of tan and brown tones with muted red accents. The support structures will also be of tan and/or brown tones. I don't mind if they want to put it, well, tan tones, tan or brown tones.
Sure.
Yeah.
Do we have to vote on the amendment, the second amendment?
We do.
Yeah, and the signage on the canopy shall be modified to comply with CZC 1254-060.
No, we're not to that yet.
We're not, so we're just doing the amendment?
to
Yep.
the
Okay.
actual big pylon sign.
Guys, yeah, you're pushing
Yep, sorry.
me. This one's tough. Okay, so
You're
the
earning your-
amendment, I am earning my.
You're earning your money tonight.
So the amendment is to amend the existing motion on the table to add the tan and brown tones for the support structures.
Correct.
Okay, so let's go ahead and do that one. Commissioner Johnson?
Aye.
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 Aye?
Aye.
Aye.
Okay, now the actual motion is on the
Perfect.
table. We're all clear?
Yep.
As mud. All right. Lisa, are you clear on the motion?
Yeah, I think you can just say that the canopy design and the support structures for the pylon sign shall. So you're just
Yeah.
using both of those.
Great.
And then you have the
That's what
color
I-
scheme.
Shall consist of a
Yeah.
two-tone canopy color scheme consisting of tan and brown tones, although the canopy can have a muted red accent, and then the sign on the canopy will be modified to comply with the applicable zoning code. All right, are we ready? Commissioner Workman?
Aye.
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 Great, thank you.
Madam Chair, can I ask a question and clarification, then
Please do.
address the applicant after?
Yes.
So the question that I have with the sign that you've gone through, you don't have to solve it tonight. Just be aware of the conflict that you've created. The existing sign is painted already in a color, so the applicant can choose to keep that sign as is.
Sure.
And it may not come back to you, just so you're aware of that. If it does,
Yep.
then he knows the direction. Second to Brad, I will send you a follow-up with their approval, but you're also welcome to give me a call so I can outline your options for coming back with the final, and then you can go back and weigh what you talk with the corporate about. So they have a clear understanding of your constraints, and then you can decide how you want to broach it on the final site plan.
Yeah. Thank you very much.
Oh,
We're at the end. Thank you. Moving to the second item on our agenda, we have a continued South Main Street corridor plan discussion. We get to look at the whole kit and caboodle tonight. This one will be fun. So I will turn the time over to staff.
I've attached to your document, and now you see what I have and all the edits that take place. And so I've gone back up into the existing general plan language, have shown you where we're trying to make consistency in other chapters, and added some feedback that I heard from you about the tone of what the corridor is trying to do, and you'll see that highlighted in red. So you get the existing language changes, and then you'll go down to page 3, and that starts your replacement or revised, careful with my word choices, your revised section of the corridor plan. And what you see in there is all the text that you requested that I had in my notes, highlighted in yellow. And just keep in mind, there's some eliminations, like the residential in the North Gateway, that's struck, so you don't even see it in the document. So where you eliminated, it's just simply removed. And so at that point, also, I've gone back to the residential section, this optional component, and hopefully split it out like you've requested, addressing it in kind of 2 elements. So really, it's your direction on how you want to discuss this. I assume you're not going to go line by line, but I don't know if you want to go page by page with the highlights and make sure that it's covering what you intended.
Yeah, I think that I was gonna go section by section, but
That's
maybe
fine.
page by page is a it will be an easier process since we've all got it formatted that way. So let's do it that way. Let's do it page by page, unless anyone has any concerns or comments that they want to make globally before we start digging into the meat of it. Okay, so let's go ahead and start. Any comments on page 1?
Yeah, I have one comment on page 1. So bullet point number 2, down kind of the bottom part of the page, the Main Street commercial area is aging and somewhat deteriorating. And then there's this sentence that says significant enhancement of commercial viability is not likely to occur in the future, period. Last time we talked about how we kind of changed that language last time in that section, and so, but we didn't.
Yeah,
adjust
remember,
it
this
here.
is the existing language back up into the other areas of the general plan.
Sure, but I'd like to, if we could, be a little bit more positive about it instead
Yeah,
of
you
just
can
saying, you know
change
what,
this.
all hope is lost. So, and so, I don't know if that means unstriking unless some type of restoration or revitalization is encouraged, or if there's a better way to say that. I honestly don't have a good answer for that. So my default is to unstrike the unless part, unless somebody has a better idea.
I don't recall why we struck that in the first place. Do you remember?
No, I don't remember that either.
I liked the more positive area, which is down, let me find
Is that going to be on section 5?
Section, yes. Section 5 on.
Yeah, if you go back up, that statement, and the other two in yellow, on your
Although-
page 1 are the same. That
Yeah,
that comes from your changes down in section 5.
Mm,
Then there's a small section of Main Street corridor did
Well-
and does provide local community services.
No, well, but we changed it last time, and I did remember seeing it being changed. Where was that?
So in section 5,
Yeah.
Let's go down.
consider future residential as a supplementary allowable use. It does say, although South Main Street never became a strong merchant focal point, this small section of the Main Street corridor did and does provide needed local community services.
Yeah, so,
And then it says, additionally, efforts to preserve opportunities. So I think the reason why I liked that, I think it does have a more optimistic view. So I think we could probably just take out that whole section that says,
Significant enhancement
yeah,
of
so
commercial-
are you okay with the yellow being added from sections 5 onto page 1?
I would prefer that.
Then you're on 2.
And then you're also on page 2, same thing.
Yeah. I just think whenever it's talking
So
about,
number 2, there, the Main Street commercials, blah, blah, blah. And then it has the same sentence.
yeah. And that, so section, so the 2.A, the opening paragraph, as well as 2.A number 2 has that same idea.
Yeah, and then on page 5, the 4th bullet point has the exact same language as well.
Yeah, so we just need to strike that language out of the whole plan so that it's not,
Strike what language out of the plan?
Significant enhancement of commercial viability is not likely to occur in the future. That shows up 3 times in here.
So you think commercial viability will be increased? Stay the
that's-
that's why
same?
we're doing the whole thing.
That's why we're doing this.
I think you need to debate whether that's a reality when you're applying the other ideas.
Well, I just think, I mean, we're not doing this for fun, right? So we're doing this because we actually really.
Yeah, because I don't think you're going to have
believe-
enhancement of commercial viability in the future. You're just going to maintain and preserve what you've got and enhance a little bit in the design. But you're not going to get a synergy of more commercial. Unless you think that Main Street corridor is going to re-synergize commercially.
So
So what
what-
we're trying to say is look, we are where we're at.
Corey, I think maybe you're seeing this differently than I am, for sure. I don't know about
Yeah,
Becky.
I'm thinking that you're going to bring in more commercial uses.
That's what we're hoping to do.
More commercial uses?
that's why we worked on the use list.
Yeah, that's why we're doing the use list.
Yeah, but you were trying to incentivize some commercial uses, but you're talking about trying not to aggregate parcels together so that you can aggregate a bigger development?
No.
You're trying to keep what commercial there is there. You're not looking to try to tear it down and redo bigger parcels and greater economic drive out of the corridor.
I don't think that's said in this conversation right here at all. I don't think we're talking about aggregating parcels. I don't
Right,
think
so
we're
that's what I'm
talking about
saying. There's
anything like
not,
that.
what you're saying, you're not intending to re-synergize this commercial and bring in a lot more commercial development. You're trying to maintain it as local ownership, small development, local owners, pretty much as it is today.
But it will be commercially
But better
viable.
designed with a few enhancements and opportunities of uses. But you're not going to bring in a new viable commercial product to the corridor unless you're really planning to do. But we've never discussed that.
It seems to me we've got an issue, it's where ship's passing in the night here a little bit on some, I think some ambiguities or the terms of art that we're seeing in this,
Yeah.
the way it's constructed. To me, okay, so the Main Street commercial area, let's see, oh no, I just moved to the wrong spot. There we go. The Main Street commercial area is aging and somewhat deteriorating. I don't know that accurately characterizes it, actually. I think that the Main Street commercial area is linear and disconnected.
Right, but remember, this was the tone of the existing plan.
And, you know, significant enhancement of commercial viability. That commercial viability is just too, maybe it's too artful for what we're going for here. That, because there is room for commercial viability there. It's just, but to your point, we're not going to be putting in a new big box store on Main Street. So if that's what you mean when you say commercial viability, I couldn't agree more. But I
Right.
think that there is the promise of great vitality on South Main Street with the type of commercial that we're envisioning.
Right.
And so I think that we could probably change this a little bit to reflect that, that significant enhancement of commercial viability is not likely to occur in the future. Yeah, I think we need to look at this.
Yeah, I just don't want you to set yourself up into the future, that somebody walks into this general plan and says, look what I've got. And this increases and enhances your viability. And your general plan wants that. And now we tear down several buildings and put in a Walgreens.
But we limited.
I don't think that's going to happen, though.
But remember, when developers come in, they're looking at your vision. And the message of the vision has to be, yes, it's broad in its scope, but be careful where you take that, because they're going to come in and they're saying, this is a significant enhancement of commercial viability, and I'm bringing in X, Y, and Z to this, and here is your taxes, and here is your everything going up, and you're not looking for the corridor to do that because you're trying to protect the residential uses on the back sides, which has been the message from all of these work sessions.
Why don't we
Make
take-
it compatible.
But I think that, so here's the thing.
If we just took out significant enhancement of commercial viability is not likely to occur in the future, then it wouldn't give developers a reason to think, this is significant commercial
Right.
viability.
Yeah, but
And it
that's what I'm
also
saying.
wouldn't say to us, we don't believe that we could revitalize.
Yeah, so
if
what
we
I'm,
just-
what I'm trying to say, maybe it's the wrong words, what I'm trying to say is, we don't envision a significant enhancement.
But Corey, I think that also sends a message that we don't support it being nice or getting better too, for
Well,
what we do envision it being.
Yeah, but I want you to balance that you've got the residential on each side. This has been
Yeah.
the tension for a long time, is do not promote too much commercial because it impacts us residents right bordering the area. And in our long discussions, and even the council, and I'm trying to reflect that work session, they don't see a significant growth of the residential uses, and they don't see a significant growth in the commercial uses.
Isn't that reflected in the language that you have here in blue, which indicates that some revitalization is warranted and should be encouraged
Right.
in a limited manner to maintain the local service-oriented uses for
Right.
the community?
So the language is trying to say, we don't envision some significant influx of commercial development.
So I would propose taking out the second sentence and then changing the third one to start with some revitalization. And that way, I think it captures what you're trying to say, because I agree with you, Corey. I don't think that anyone on the commission, I mean, I'm speaking for myself, but I would imagine that no one on the commission is envisioning that we're putting this forward to encourage a giant Walgreens to come in. I think what we're trying to do is encourage the revitalization commercial viability in a limited manner, and we don't have to even use the word commercial viability because that might be sort of a trigger word for, people that are developing. So if we just took that second paragraph or second sentence out, then we just kept it. The Main Street commercial area is aging and somewhat deteriorating. Some
Yeah,
revitalization is warranted, and
Yeah,
then keep going that way.
Yeah.
If that helps you feel comfortable, yeah, it's saying the same thing in my mind, but if that makes you feel more comfortable, that's okay.
Yeah, I agree. I support that. I think that says what we're trying to say and works without trying to imply too much, I guess.
I mean, I'm sure there's other language we could use, but I think if we just took that out, that might be that source of confusion could be taken out, and we still are left with kind of, I mean, I still kind of agree with what Isaac was saying. I don't know if we should say aging and deteriorating. I think I liked your idea.
I don't want to know why we couldn't say something like limited in size and scope or something like that, because that's what we're saying, is it's, we're not going to be putting in big box stores there. It's limited in size, there's only so much of it, and it's limited in the scope of what we envision it becoming, that these will be local service-oriented uses for the community.
I agree with that, but from the beginning, that's kind of the whole purpose of why we're revitalizing this, is because we agree that it kind of was old and deteriorating, and it's just kind of stagnant. And so,
But
to
for our
me,
vision,
well, I think this is saying this is why we're creating this plan, is because this is how it currently is. And so we're proposing this vision because of how it currently is. So the way I read that is hey, this is how it is, so this is what we're proposing. I mean, we're not proposing that it's, I mean, that's how I read it. Maybe I'm reading it wrong, but.
well, do you think, I agree that that's kind of a reasoning, that's a good reasoning. Do you think it belongs in like the vision area of, if you were a developer and you come and you read the vision area, ooh, I'm so excited to invest in here because this is old and aging and deteriorating. Do you think that is something that is a positive vision for the
That we
area?
want to improve it? Yeah, I think so.
Yeah, the contrast, you kind of, to see how light something is, you got to kind of see how dark it was, and while it might be linear and fragmented, I think as I look at the O'Brien site, that's deteriorating. I don't know if I'd say blight, there isn't quite packs of rabid dogs, but
So, yeah, to me,
it's about as,
to me, it's saying, hey, we realize there's an issue because everyone realizes there is. So this is what we're going to do to make it better, to improve it, to allow development to happen. Because right now, the way the code is written is it's not really allowing it to happen, and so this is why we're proposing this plan. So I don't think someone's going to read that and say, oh crap, this area is crappy, and so I don't want to develop here, because it says right here it's crappy.
what?
I
Crappy?
What if we took out, I understand what you're saying. What if we took out some revitalization is warranted? Why don't we just say revitalization is warranted? So it is showing the contrast of,
I think it's fine.
I don't know.
Take-
What do you think?
So you're saying leave aging, leave that comment about aging, or go with linear and fragmented?
I like Isaac's better, but if no one else agrees with us, then I can keep the,
I think linear and fragmented is fine. I guess it serves the same purpose, that just kind of shows that it's kind of stagnant.
Well, we could clean up that second sentence to kind of, harmonize the message, to say something to the effect of significant in size, or something like significant, like large commercial structures. The development of large commercial structures is not likely to occur in the future.
well, we already say that in number 1. We say encourage any large-scale commercial development would be detrimental to surrounding residential areas and to future that should be
Yeah.
functionability.
Doesn't that
of Main Street.
already discourage the idea of big box coming in? I mean,
Yeah.
we're
That's
focusing
number
so
one.
much
So
on number
that- so I
2
don't
that I
think-
think we've already discouraged that.
I don't think we need to keep the second sentence of number 2 at all because it's already said in number 1.
I agree. I think we strike that second sentence all the way up to and including nonetheless, and then just start with.
And some. Take out some too.
Okay.
Yeah, that's fine.
What do you think about Isaac's comment of doing it linear and, what did you say, linear and limited, or
Yeah.
Limited, linear and fragmented.
Or
limited in size and scope?
fragmented, disconnected, because you're kind of scattered all over, but it's very linear down the arterial.
By arterial, you mean the pedestrian and bike artery?
I mean the road.
The road.
So when you look at limited, you're looking at it strictly in terms of size and not in types of uses.
Yes, yes.
Because
to be
I think
clear.
that is important, because as we're looking at striking all of this language, I go back to why we very first started to do this at the beginning. And our concept was, we want to hang out a sign to people saying, we are open for business.
Right.
And we look at the languages, we've pared it down, and really we're saying, we really kind of want it to be exactly like it is, but only a tiny, tiny bit better. And I'm not sure that that really gets us where we wanted to be in the first instance.
That's a good
So
point.
you don't want to say limited because you don't want them to think that, you don't want people to think when they look at the vision that we
Right.
still want it limited?
I mean, I looked at it and said, when I looked at significant enhancement of commercial viability was something that we wanted to encourage. We do want to open up the uses. And we already say we don't want to encourage larger scale commercial development. What we want to do is encourage other types of medium, soft commercial development along that corridor. And let's open it up. Let's allow people to get in and do different uses to try to revitalize that. And so I worry that we're paring it down so much that the end product is going to be very different than what we went into this process for at the beginning.
Well, Shaylin, I like what you're saying about it is encouraged. Significant enhancement of, again, this commercial viability is a little artful for me, but significant enhancement, is encouraged. But it's encouraged within the confines and context of, the size of, the property that we have available there.
Right.
That's what's going to govern what goes in there.
Because we do, again, already say in number 1, we don't want to encourage larger scaled commercial development.
Yeah.
And so we've already said that.
And it also says in number 3, future commercial development should conform to performance guidelines. So minimal traffic, impact to Main Street, da, da, da. So we're going to then go through and talk about what those are, which is going to easily help people understand we're not wanting gigantic, big stuff.
I'll just add my last 2 cents for what they're worth. I don't have a problem in number 2 with acknowledging what currently exists, right? I don't think that it is negative or unpositive to say, this is how it is now, and here is how we want to make it better. So I did not have any objection with the way that the language was initially drafted, but.
So do you like? But
Right, but I think, so then maybe all I'm asking for in that case is some type of qualifier to not likely to occur, meaning it's not likely to occur
Well,
currently.
Let me go back and fix some of that language, listening to your discussion, because it's not the final product, because we're gonna head out to being able to do a work session with the city council and also to the residents of the area. But let me give you one fair warning. If you come across to the public that you're trying to open the door, even though if that's a positive in your mind, you will get a severe amount of resistance from the surrounding residents. And so it's okay for you as a commission to say, this is the direction we want to go. And I'm okay supporting you in the language. But I can tell you at this point in time, if it is a sign that says hanging the door open, and it leads to that kind of tone, it's going to most likely be squashed in the public process.
Well,
But don't we want to know that sooner rather than later? I mean, I don't want to do a bait and switch. I don't want to send something out in a Trojan horse so that people aren't alarmed by language and then have us try to slide it in. So I think that if there is going to be concern, get it out there, and I'd rather know sooner rather than later.
Right.
But at the
I'm-
same time, too, I don't think people, if they read this and they see that we're not encouraging large-scale commercial development, we're not encouraging changing things to a degree that changes their sense of local ownership, We are trying to revitalize their
Yeah, but the
city.
issue is to what extent?
Right, and that's why we have it right here, very
Right, and that's why I'm
governed.
saying, from my point of view, you're talking both sides of the fence. Wherever you've been changing tonight, you're talking both sides of the fence. Oh, we don't want large. Oh, we're gonna look at traffic. Oh, we're gonna look at this. But hey, but we really want enhancement.
Corey, do you mean, okay, so maybe that's the word, enhancement. When you say enhancement, do you mean larger? Do you mean commercial high? Do you mean,
Yeah, well, I think
is
there's
that what you mean by
confusion here.
enhancement?
Yeah, you're gonna go back in too, and you're gonna say, we want more commercial synergy driven out of this corridor, and we're gonna have the open door sign to get there. And if that's what you want, I'm not trying to talk you if that's your goal as a commission. But all the work sessions, the time that I've been here, the reason why we're back in and redoing this is because it was too much.
So,
Well, I think
Corey-
Shaylin said something, and maybe she does agree that, open door, everything to everyone. I don't know if that's necessarily the tone of this document or the tone of the commission. I think we want to make it increase uses so that people have the flexibility to utilize their property, increase redevelopment and enhancement so that they can, feel pride of ownership and those types of things. I don't think she, in saying that, she can correct me if I'm wrong, I don't think she's saying, woohoo, whatever, let's just go.
No, I'm not trying to be that disrespectful. I'm just talking about through the elements, people are comfortable with the corridor as is. Everybody agrees that it's aging and deteriorating and some elements to increase. And I think you have some room to add uses. But knowing the politics, knowing what discussions are going on out there, knowing what property owners are already saying and lobbying going on out there, there is a resistance that you're going to find to the neighborhood for what's happening. And I just want to make sure that you as a commission understand the temperature of your community and try to create that balance. And the reason I say that is when we came in with the Walmart plan, before Walmart, Sierra Brown and Calthorpe came in, and the city council members and planning commission put a lot of effort into that plan. And it ran an election, and a planner was dismissed. And all those elements with it. The number one problem wasn't the plan and everybody's effort. The problem was nobody was really checking the temperature of their community and understanding where the tolerance levels are. Now we have a revitalization plan that's in place, and it's done the exact same thing. Exact same thing. And we spent 5 years now trying to figure out how we're fixing that incentive. And so when I'm looking at significant revitalization, that's the city doesn't want that. They don't anticipate it, they don't want it, but they don't mind a few enhancements. And so what I'm trying to make sure is that we create a balance between, let's go and let's get an open door and let's try to revitalize this and let's bring in new uses and all of these parameters and just have another plan fail. And that's why I'm being pushy, is because I want to be careful about not creating a plan that fails again and raises the politics of this community. And we don't get what you heard residents last summer saying, what are you doing, city? Would you make a decision so we can rely on it and quit changing in the winds? And so for me, way down and will increase over time. If it doesn't accomplish, language gets fixed and we do it again. I'd rather go up with a plan than down with a plan, and that's what I'm worried about.
I appreciate that perspective, Corey. I think that's a very wise warning to give us so that we can always keep a temperature of our community. I think inherent in who we are and where we live, we should always be keeping a temperature of our neighborhood, of our community, and that's why we're here. I also agree that, and I know very well how a plan can run an election from personal experience. I understand that. So I do not want a plan to run an election. I don't want a plan to create a single issue vote for anything. I want people to realize that things are nuanced, that there's important decisions that we have to make, and yet understand that if they invest in their community, that's an investment in their quality of life, in their home, in their neighborhood. So I don't think it's too much to say that as a planning commission, we want to invest in our community. I do think we need to be careful about how we word it so that people understand that we are not wanting a gigantic high-rise residential, which we're not wanting, or a gigantic high-rise commercial, which we're also not wanting. So I think we just need to look at number 2, possibly take out that second sentence.
Yeah,
Possibly
I'm not
with you.
arguing the language, I just,
Right.
it's a theory of it. I'll go back, I'll take a shot at those sentences and take it out. I'm very passionate that this plan can't be something that results into another debacle in Centerville City.
But I think that there are people out there too that may or may not be as vocal as maybe what you have to hear every day, that truly do want to see some revitalization of this Main Street. And I think that's where, as citizen planners, we have to keep our temperature of our neighborhood and recognize that it's not just a good idea or just something that we kind of hope for in the future. It really is the temperature of people in our community wanting us to invest in our community.
Yeah, don't disagree. I think in a theory, we all kind of agree with that. I like the ships passing in the night.
Yeah.
I bet no
Reference.
one thought that this point number 2 was going to cause such debate
Yeah,
tonight.
just 18 pages to go.
Yeah.
But I'll fix that, so you don't have to spend some time with it.
Can I
Okay.
just ask a question about page number 1? Are we supposed to have the exact sort of almost identical language on the first paragraph and the second
They're in 2
paragraph?
different sections of the general plan. They're in different neighborhood areas.
You got the southeast neighborhood and the southwest neighborhood.
Well, you've got commercial development policies,
Yeah, for 12.
and then neighborhood southeast
So you got
Centerville.
432, which is in one area of the plan, and then 482, neighborhood 1. So you got your general plan, which is 432, the very first one. Then you have your neighborhood plan of 1, southeast, and then your next one's neighborhood plan 2, southwest.
Okay.
And they're not
So
consistent with each
you
other.
want to have those all the same, so
Want
that
them to
people...
all be consistent.
Okay, great.
Can I,
Sorry, on that topic, I was just wondering if it would be helpful, though, because it seems a little out of context that we're trying to talk about commercial development on Main Street. I think it'd be helpful to have a reference to 12480-7 and say, oh, by the way, there's a huge section dealing with this, just
Idea.
saying, also subject to, 1240-7.
That's a good idea.
That's a good idea.
okay.
Because it sort of implies in these neighborhoods, I know it's not the main point, but that these are the guidelines when in reality there's a lot more to the overlay corridor.
Right. Also, while you're talking, Lisa, can I ask you, first of all, maybe we could ask Corey if there was a reasoning behind changing shall to should, and what the legal implications of that. From what I understand, there's legal differences.
For me, the general plan's guidance, you're not into an ordinance. So this is our attempted goal and direction. If you start saying shall, then you may have these conflicts where you get into the zoning ordinance and it says, okay, the site plan has to comply with the general plan, and then you go back and you have no room to interpret the general plan in relation to the zoning ordinance and its implementation.
So do you think that gives us more power or less power to change it from shall to should? Or does it give developers more power or less power?
I don't think the general plan doesn't give any power to the developers. The zoning ordinance gives it. The issue is does it meet the intent of the general plan? So-
I'm just wondering why it was originally shall.
Because that's just people write shalls and shoulds. I temper the general plan with to be and shoulds, and this is our goal. And the reason I do that from my perspective is there's sometimes in the zoning ordinance when you have a particular piece of property and you're stuck within the zoning ordinance, but you're referencing the general plan, and people get hung up that the shalls in the general plan, when the general plan's an opportunity to accomplish something, but some of it may fall away in the reality of implementation of a piece of property.
My only comment on that is that it says should here, but then when you get later into it, it says ought. Do we use the word ought?
Right.
should and ought. I don't know.
Just be consistent.
Let's be consistent.
That just gets tiring reading should.
Well,
should.
later on, we just see ought. So
Yeah.
I don't know, maybe.
Should.
Switch off.
Every other.
Just to answer your question,
every-
though, under statutory construction, shall is mandatory and should is permissive. So, but again, it is sort of how you want to draft this. So there are some shalls in the Main Street, but, you know, as you're reading those, the should is just a
Suggestion.
permissive.
Okay.
Okay.
Well,
Page one.
Any,
Nice.
anything else you'd like to raise on page 1? I'm almost scared to ask.
Well, that's my fault.
Well, I'm just
my
wondering
fault.
if anyone
It's all
has
good.
any.
No. I say that cheekily, but I really think that it's an important discussion to have. And so I do not want anyone to feel like they should not raise concerns, because I definitely, now is the time.
This is the time. So should and shall, no one has any
No.
No.
problem with should.
No.
Okay, last thing, just as kind of we were just following up with the number 2, like we kind of mentioned on the optional component, goal 5, that first sentence is the one, although South Main Street never.
Wait, are you on page 1?
I am. I'm trying to explain that the wording on Goal 5, although South Main Street never became a strong merchant focal point, this small section of the Main Street corridor did and does provide needed local community services. That is great language that could possibly be utilized in that number 2 section.
Well, it's used in the introductory paragraph. It's where these yellows are. Reality never became a strong merchant focal
Oh,
point.
there you go.
Nonetheless,
Did and does provide needed local community services. Okay,
that was a comment you made last time, so I just
Perfect.
bumped that up to these sections.
sorry about that. Thank you.
Okay.
Okay.
Sorry, and I saw you looking at a page that did not look like my page 1. I'm like, where is she? Wait,
No, I
what
was
is she
just
talking
looking at-
about?
yep.
Okay. All right, anything else on page 1? All right, let's move to page 2. Any comments on the changes that staff
Has
has
the
made?
same significant in there, so I'll
Yeah.
redo that.
I had a question on some, let's see. Never mind. I might come back to that. Where did the, okay.
Anything else on, anything?
Yeah, that's what
on
my
page
question,
2?
that was my question. Okay, sorry.
Okay.
The first paragraph, some of these streetscapes features conflicted with UDOT's traffic regulations, while others were deemed too expensive or took up space.
Where are
Are
you?
you on page 2?
Sorry, I'm on page 3. I'm sorry. Sorry.
Okay, so
I'm getting
any,
confused which page I'm on.
this is why, guys, I'm old fashioned. Do you see?
I
what-
should, I know, I should
like
do that.
printing it
I'm
too.
sorry.
I follow the Dave Hershey method of chairmanship
Yes.
over here. Anything else on page 2? No, okay, so now page 3.
Okay, now, Becky.
Sorry. My question is, can you explain to me, because I don't understand or remember it being any of our streetscape features conflicting with UDOT's traffic regulations, because we met with them and we met with both UDOT and
Yeah, they weren't going to
with,
allow the bollards.
I thought the planter boxes.
The planter boxes was a big concern for them, and so the issue of design breakaway came up,
Breakaway.
and whether we could do it as a breakaway.
Tree stuff, I remember they talked a little bit about.
Tree, they kind of counted that,
so they were concerned, but did it actually conflict with their regulations?
Yeah,
bollard discussion was a huge conflict
we
with the
talked about that
regulation.
before. The whole concept of breakaway.
And we still recommended it even when they said it didn't work?
The commission did, but the council turned it down.
I'm just surprised that we as a commission would completely vote in favor of something if if it was against their actual regulation.
It was
Well,
against,
that's our moral duty to oppose UDOT wherever we can.
I feel like they perhaps were not like wanting certain things, but that didn't
no,
conflict
you
with
had,
their actual
you had
regulation.
two. I mean, you had the first meeting with the director, and he played the nice guy, the good cop. Mm-hmm. And then you had Paul with the traffic come in and say, absolutely not. Bad cop.
And we still really sent it up like that?
No, you went forward with finding a way to design the breakaway to try to meet UDOT standards.
Okay, so then can we change that to suggestions or what they were comfortable with or something? Because it makes it sound like we put something up against what was their
No,
regulation.
I'm just taking the findings of the council, conflicted with UDOT regulations, and we don't want to do it. So
What
that was-
I'm saying is, I don't think it conflicted with their regulations. I think it conflicted with their suggestions.
Because our suggestions conflicted with the regulations.
Did we send it up? Did we really vote in favor of a plan that was against UDOT's regulations?
Here is the question. Did the city council believe that the features conflicted with UDOT's traffic
Yes.
regulations? Because if the city, regardless of what we thought, if the city council believed that they conflicted
did.
with UDOT regulations, then this is just reflecting what the city council found, whether we agree with it or not.
But I think we did send something up to to the city council that conflicted.
Why would we do that?
Traffic calming, we talked about it,
I-
just in an effort to traffic calm. Didn't we think if we
Traffic calming.
Yeah.
crowd the street, it slows them down, UDOT slows the street down, it starts the cycle of pedestrian activity?
But like inherent in my body, I would not like try to do something against the law or against what regulations would be. So I find it very hard to believe that as a commission, we purposefully went and put together a plan that is against what is a regulation.
No, you made suggestions on how to try to comply with those regulations. Later debates and discussion says UDOT was extremely uncomfortable with some of those elements.
I voted no.
Does anyone else have any concerns with the language as drafted in an effort to move this along? Not to downplay your concerns, but
I
are they
am
shared by
concerned.
anyone else?
I am concerned.
I don't.
The plan absolutely had planter boxes, it had bollards and everything right there in that zone. And we spent a lot of time talking about that. And I'm pretty sure that the plan that we ultimately sent up to the city council included that stuff, kind of like, hey, look, we really like this stuff,
So try to make it work.
so make it work, yeah.
And UDOT, never mind, this probably should be the deaf person.
Any other comments on page 3? All right. Page 4.
I like the change where it says maintain and promote, so thank you for that.
Anything else on page 4?
Can we just take out the for as long as possible? We talked about that being out too. Opportunity for local owners to be successful.
I think you did talk about that.
Oh, yeah.
Yeah, I'm okay with that. Anyone else have any concerns with striking that language? Do you
Sorry,
see
where
it?
are we?
So right underneath where it says maintain and promote, where he's added maintain and promote,
We're on page 4.
on page 4.
It's for, oops.
Yeah, I did miss that. You did talk about long as
So-
possible.
So we're gonna just take out for as long as possible. Okay, anything, good catch. Anything else on page 4?
Also, on long-range pledge, compromise to achieve consistency, we had a long conversation about how compromise was,
That's what you concluded in your debate.
that was the one you had last time, compromise to achieve consistency. I highlighted it. So I'm wondering if,
I can go back and look at what you had at that meeting.
I'm just wondering if compromise is the correct word there? Because
Yeah,
to me,
you talked
when you
about
say,
compromising, but getting a realistic outcome, but I can go back and check to what you,
I mean, what do
had in
you
the
all
notes.
think? Do you think that our plan is to compromise?
What are the two sides of the proposed compromise? It's compromising.
What would you replace instead?
I'd just say like collaborate maybe, collaborate to achieve consistency or something that is more positive instead of like, I'm compromising on what my standards are or on what I really want and then in order to get something else. So I think if you had a word that was more positive, like collaborate to achieve consistency or work together to achieve consistency, or,
I like collaborate.
I like collaborate. Just go collaborate.
and then on the transportation, we talked about, do we want to, or, so I like the consider, I think that one is not supposed to be capitalized.
Anything else on page 4?
We were wondering if, well, that's on the next page.
I know that we talked ad nauseum about the historic heart, but at the bottom of page 4, under paragraph D, where it says the South Main Street corridor is considered the heart of Centerville City, I can see people pushing back on that and saying, not currently, it's not. So what if we, instead of.
Yeah, in other areas you
Or
said
trad-
historic heart.
Or it, to avoid like saying it over and over and over again, maybe we can say traditional heart. I mean,
Yeah.
it used to be.
I like that.
A long time ago, it's just not now.
I like that.
Sure.
I don't feel strongly about it, I just,
No, we were talking about that previously.
okay, anything else on page 4? Page 5?
We talked about at least be an equal priority mode of travel. Do we feel like that's correct?
Is that how we settled it? Is that where we ended?
Which one are you looking at, Becky?
The very first sentence on page 5, at the very top line.
It starts on page 4. Additionally, walking and biking within this area ought
Yeah, it
to.
was another section. This is being repeated.
Yeah, let's make that update.
Yep.
I didn't catch that.
And we have that same significant sentence here too.
Right.
Okay. Anything else on page 5?
You mean the, yeah.
Kevin, are you
That
talking
check
about
mark?
the significant
The fourth, yeah,
growth
the-
of an enhancement of
Yeah.
commercial synergies not likely to occur in the future?
Yeah, that fourth check mark, exactly.
Yeah. and
You
you'll
guys
just-
did agree with that. Originally.
Well,
You're changing. I'm just
We
letting
are.
you know you originally agreed with it.
that's fine.
Well, maybe
Then
we
we
have
did that-
come
we-
to understand.
For the record, I'm perfectly fine with that language, but I will defer to my colleagues.
I think
I
it'd be
like
better-
taking a more positive tone
Yeah.
on that one.
I do too.
Yeah, we can change that.
Great.
Anything else on page 5?
No.
Page 6? Page 7?
Yeah. These are minor. Well, first of all, kind of in the middle of the page, under goal 2, to date, the South Main Street corridor is, that should be predominantly. There needs to be another N in there, predominantly. Then, under 2A1, commercial area limitations,
That's in your existing general plan, and so we're repeating it here.
well, so here's what I'm saying on this one. We only talk about extending more than a half block east of Main Street, but we're not talking about west of Main Street here. We did previously, way back on the.
Yeah, just leave that section out, yeah. I didn't copy it right from the other part of the general plan,
So as long as we're not omitting
east and west
east
of
and
Main
west.
Street.
Okay.
And Corey, that must in 2A1 feels a little bit like a shall. I don't know if you would substitute should or ought there.
Yeah, I'm copying your existing general plan language.
Oh, duh.
Yes, and we want it to be a.
I
must
just
on that
missed
one.
the east-west.
That one is
Oh,
a, that one
at
is a
least it
good
looks like
place.
it says shall instead of must, is that right?
Shall.
Does it say so?
It says shall when we first used it.
Where-
That was one of those hard.
Yeah,
Corey, you're also missing a period at the end of 2A2.
okay.
That's all I got.
Okay, anything else on page 7? Page 8?
Yeah, just the very bottom line, parcel size, just one parcel. Right, given the parcel
Right.
sizes.
Yeah.
Double.
Anything else on page 8? Page 9? Page 10?
This is where
Page
historic
10?
art, yeah, that's
Okay.
where that is. Good.
I like it. For some reason, I look at it and it reminds me of the Telltale Heart. It's like this nice, has a good ring to it. Okay, so sorry, anything else on page 10?
Not because it's beating some ominous something.
And thank you for changing that significant design improvement priorities. I think that looks good too.
Page 11?
Yeah, sorry, I got two minor things on page 11. On 3C1, 3, city halls, just, so strike the apostrophe S under cities. So city halls, West Porch. And then the very last line, this leads into page 12, so I don't know, maybe we bring it up then, but specific wait, what is it? There's only one amendment needed, so specific amendment needed.
A specific amendment needed is,
Yeah, A.
Yeah. So get rid of the R, change it, whatever. That's it.
And please do not apologize for comments. These are good. It's clear that you guys have given this a really close review. We all catch different things, so
Yeah.
thanks. Anything else on page 11? Page 12?
Yeah, toward the bottom of page 12, under 3D6, the second line says ought to be limited to 2 stories, so we need to add 2 in there.
yes.
That's all I got.
Anything else on page 12? Page 13?
Yeah, sorry, one thing on this one, and this kind of brings up another topic. So 4A, traffic is not underlined, but sector is. So do that, but then there's
Huh?
Oh, I see. Down
4A,
here.
4A, the header, traffic.
Underline.
Sorry.
Oh, there.
Yeah, sorry, anyway. But this one, it's this one is formatted a little bit differently than some of the previous ones, so, and this is just kind of an OCD thing on my part, is formatting. So maybe when we see the final one, the formatting can be consistent throughout.
Corey, I just noticed in the highlighted language under the header for goal 4, there, the first "and" that you include there is capitalized, which it shouldn't be, to be consistent with the rest of that. I do like in other forms of transit.
I do too.
Anything else on page 13? Page 14? Page 15? Kudos on figuring out what we said at the meeting when you were not
even
here.
I know, right?
Anything on 16?
Yeah, toward the top of the page, 4, I guess, optional feature. The third line down says an alternative options. It should just be option. That's it.
Did we talk about
No, you did
using
not talk
larger
about 2,
planting
that's my
removable
addition.
pots?
We didn't, but I thought that
I
was
made
kind of a
that
cool
addition.
idea.
I like it too.
Yeah.
So you can talk about it, but you didn't talk about it, because I made that addition after you said, put this optional feature in.
I still like the hanging pots better, but I know that not everyone does. So I thought that it was a nice thing to put in there so that it.
And they blast away when the car hits that
Yeah,
zone.
I was going to say, as long as those
Total
pots have a
breakaway.
breakaway feature.
Yeah, that's what I was just thinking too. Does it comply with UDOT?
We can get a variance from those UW.
If it doesn't, apparently we don't care, right?
As long as they're not more than 3.5 feet high, so you can see over them.
That's what they did in Logan,
Triangles.
and UDOT approved it in Logan.
Well, no, actually, don't we really want it to say alternative options?
Yeah.
Would be to use the larger planting removable pots along the sidewalks or in dedicated
yeah,
spaces.
yeah, it should be.
So it should be alternative options.
Alternative
Yeah,
options.
that's
Yeah.
first word's wrong.
Yep.
And then take out the comma.
Yeah, I think that that's right. Okay, anything else on page 16? Oh, by the way, are we all okay with adding in the pots? Pots are good? Thumbs up.
It's an optional feature, you bet.
Okay. I was a big supporter of planter boxes, so I'm definitely okay with that. Anything on 17? Okay, and I do want to place a pause for us to come back and talk about whether we even want the optional component section. So let's just assume, for purposes of getting through the rest of this plan,
Are we on 17?
yep, we're on 17.
can we
Did we go-
really,
you wanna go back to
can I
16?
just go back to 16? So are the bollards in compliance with UDOT or not?
Depends on where you place them. If they're 12 feet back, you're okay.
Also, I was kind of thinking about these, sort of this whole scheme. I'm wondering if, sorry, the whole section, which is the street space. And I'm wondering if, kind of what Shaylin was talking about with having the historic materials, and we talked through with the landmarks committee, would it be appropriate, Corey, to have any sort of examples of, like, include any kind of examples with this visually for people to see? Or, like, for instance, we have our museum, our Whitaker Museum, which is historic. It's got a great feel to it. Our city has obviously put forth a lot of money and effort to see that continue. So if we were to consider something that would be examples of what we were looking for, would that?
You can always put illustrations in, and if you have good examples and things you like, illustrations are helpful to explain what you're wanting to do. They can somewhat be difficult. So the example is you go to the overlay that we have in place now and go to the zoning ordinance, all those pictures in the lot types, council hated them because they don't depict what they think Main Street would look like. But they do depict the framing elements in the lot type. So that's where you get tensions between illustrations and narratives.
Well,
So
if
if
we
there's
used our
if there's
own
good if there's some
stuff-
good examples, yeah, include the illustrations or pictures in.
I don't know, what do you guys think about using our museum as a guide? That like sign thing is cool.
I think
It's
that
inviting.
I would be very hesitant to only put one thing in. I think that I am much more inclined to allow for a wider variety. And so then if we start getting into, well, if we include this type, then we have to include that type, then we have to include that type. So I think I'm not in favor of doing that.
Yeah,
I
I
just,
We can be more
I just
comprehensive.
think if you consider wanting to make, so strategically, if you want this street space to be successful with the council, then we probably need to consider what the council likes that is harmonious with what we're trying to communicate to them. And so if you consider that they have invested money and time into our museum, and that is something that they hold as valuable, perhaps if we explain to them, maybe in words, maybe not in visually, maybe you could say something like, similar to other historic properties found along Main Street, such as, and then you could use that as an example or something. That way they could say in their brain, oh, I understand what they're trying to do. They're trying to support the same thing that we support, and this is an example of it.
Let me make a suggestion. If that is the intent, wouldn't we be better off using demonstrative visuals in a work session meeting so we could convey that to the city council without including it in this type of
Yes.
universal document?
That's great.
But I don't think that that's a bad idea at all. I think that that's actually a great idea.
But I think I agree with you, Shaylin, though, that I don't think we want to limit everything just to the Whitaker Museum, right?
I don't
Because
either.
there's the old,
I don't want to either.
what was the co-op, the white building on Center Street in Maine where the mural is
cool.
now, which I think if we had other buildings that kind of had some of those elements to it, yeah, absolutely,
Some cool 30s and 40s.
Right.
elements.
I don't want to limit it either. I'm just trying to find some language or something that the council can understand and get behind, so that, as Corey was saying, this plan doesn't fail, so that they can see the reasoning behind why we're doing these things.
And Corey, will you make a note to, let's revisit that before the work session? to consider coming up with some demonstratives that might help us get our vision across to the city council.
Sure.
I think that's an excellent suggestion. Okay, so turning to page 7, let's 17. So, does anybody have any changes to 4C2? So that's the top part of that page. Okay, so here's
Where? What page?
page 17.
Top parts.
Yeah, the top half
Okay.
of that. So here's what I want to do. I know that there was some discussion before about whether we even wanted to include this residential section or not. I would like for you to assume, just for purposes of argument right now, that we all agree that it should be in. I'm not saying that we agree that it's in, but we're just for purposes of getting through this thing. Where I want to see if anybody has any changes to the language as drafted, and then we can come back and debate on a larger matter whether we want to include the sections as amended or not. Okay? Are we all on the same page? Sure. So with that preface, any comments with regard to the language on the bottom half of page 17?
Again, this was kind of an artful construction, and I'm not really sure what it's, what we're trying to convey here. As a supportive or supplementary role to these small-scale commercial enterprises, missing or needed housing stock could play a role in the economic success of preserving and maintaining a domestic commercial land use investment. Corey, I don't think I could do what you do, because I mean, it's a lot of wordsmithing, and I guess I do what you do, but I don't know what that means. And so I think that,
Well, it might be blending too many thought patterns into it in the wordsmithing effort to it. You know, first of all, I'm trying to support your accessory and low-level use of it. But as I said back in the work session, not everybody was too, I'm obligated as a planner in my profession and my licensure to advocate for housing.
yeah.
And so I'm trying to blend the issue that justification, you have an aging or linear, or whatever we want to really call it, it's not quite as successful as we want it to be. We want to improve it, and then an option is that there is some missing housing styles and opportunities in the city. And this, in an accessory way, like accessory apartments, small infill, something of that nature, could help function, not only synergize the corridor with reinvestment, but also meet the housing needs that are missing in the community. We are so predominantly single-family, and where we have allowed density, it is so heavy on the density. And we don't have a middle margin in much handling our housing needs. And so I'm trying to capitalize on what this commission said, let's make it accessory, and I'm trying to say, and look at your missing element of your housing as you decide to bring in residential to the corridor. And look towards that type of housing.
Yeah, and the image that came to me when I read that sentence, it seemed rather clear to me, is if you have a business here, and let's say you're upper level, you're not using for much, and you're trying to, how'd you phrase that? Contribute to the economic success or the maintenance of a domestic commercial land use. You could say, well, let's take that upper level, let's do a couple of units in there, one unit that I rent out, and I'll keep my business going on the lower level, but that way I can have more cash flow on my property and have a more successful property, in essence. Would that be a fulfillment of what that sentence is kind of trying to describe?
Yeah, I mean, I could split it out so it's not so long and lengthy,
Sure.
but that's the intent.
If Corey splits that sentence out, does that resolve your concern, Isaac?
Yeah, I mean, I'd like to see it, but I think so. I think it needs to be.
I think we've made enough substantive changes that we're probably going to want to see this one again before we
Right.
push it along anyway. So, any other comments with regard to the proposed language here on the bottom half of page 17?
So I know that we personally are seeing this as possibly working in an accessory manner. Is that even something that is allowed in our city right now?
Meaning,
If the developer came in and said, I like the tone of this general plan, what tool do I use in your toolkit in the zones to apply that?
that's what your overlay is going to do.
So the
So you're
overlay
gonna,
would,
overlay is going to allow ADUs and nowhere else.
Well, it may not be ADUs, what we decide, but yeah, the overlay is the implementation of your uses.
Okay.
So what we're saying in page 17 is very different for our community right now. Even though from what we're talking about in a residential component, because we were asked to look at a residential component from the city council, saying right here in this overlay that we would allow an accessory manor.
Yeah, because this section of the city is different than every other section of the city.
Okay. I
And
just
your
wanna
work
make sure that we're
session with
clear
the council
that.
indicated they liked that direction in accessory.
So back to the question that we've asked a long time ago, is Main Street unique? Yeah, it's unique.
Okay, as long as we all understand that that is not allowed anywhere else in the city and that we are allowing that now or wanting to allow that in that area,
Assuming that we agree to this provision.
assuming that,
Which is
yes,
going to be a
which is
separate
what we're
discussion
doing.
that we have.
and
So-
assuming that the tool that is translated, the overlay, that could translate to say, like an actual detached thing, or that could translate to say, no, you gotta build a separate residential something or something like that.
That's what I'm saying. It does, I mean, I know that I've heard from other council members that that's what they're most comfortable with residential, but I'm just sharing the thoughts that I'm having as we're talking about accessory manor, so.
Okay. Any other comments on the bottom half of page 17?
I'm wondering what your highlighted services and attends to, directly attends to the local residents? What does that mean?
Serves the needs of.
Serves the local residents, yeah.
Can we say it like that instead?
You might get the word serve.
You got supportive services serving the local residents.
Okay.
I don't think you want that.
Okay, that's fine.
Anything else on page 17? 18?
I have a question about 5A3, and Corey, maybe you can explain this a little bit more. From what I gathered from 5A3, it to me felt like rental income. Right?
It's possible, yep.
Okay. So, because it talks about supplementary economic return on commercial investment.
Yeah, I don't
providing
distinguish between
housing.
ownership and rental
I think
when I
the
talk
very-
about housing.
I think very few of those units would be owner occupied. Like, some could, but I don't really foresee that.
No, that'd be complicated, I bet.
Okay. That also just thinking aloud is it another, so when we're talking to the council, if this part passes, we just would probably want to make sure that they're aware of accessory dwelling units and rental so that they.
Well, ADUs are different because you're doing an owner occupancy in a single-family home. So accessory apartments are different than accessory dwelling units. Apartments is that you just build the upper floor and put 2 units in. It's not an owner-occupied situation. It's not restricted on the square footage. You don't have to sign a covenant and with the county that you promise to live in the house and not go anywhere for the rest of your life while you do this. Accessory dwelling units is an owner-occupied, single-family. These are accessory apartments.
Okay.
And there'll be a much more open schematic to what size and,
So this is mixed use.
mhm.
Okay.
And I should clarify, so let's finish talking about just the top half of page 18, because the bottom half is, well, bottom a fourth is something different. So anything else on the top 3/4 of page 18?
Yeah, 5A5, second sentence, just missing half acre or larger are not to exceed. Feeling.
Got it.
1/2 acre, you need acre.
Yeah, this is trying to address your issue of
Yeah, an acre.
somebody gets 3 units and they only have a 5,000 square foot lot.
Did you catch, Corey, that we're also missing the word acre after the half?
Yeah.
The first half, okay. Anything else on the top 3/4 of page 18? Okay, moving to the bottom half of 18. So this assumes that we as a committee, for purposes of right now, agree with including multifamily residential infill or redevelopment. So any discussion with regard to the bottom part of page 18?
Notice the tool that's being utilized in the introductory paragraph.
Yep.
So just to be clear, this is the multifamily not as an accessory, but as a
Primary.
primary
Like a-
use.
Primary development.
Yeah.
Townhomes and whatnot.
Right.
Yeah.
Okay, any comments on page 19?
Just so I'm clear, the first sentence, we landed on, we chose to say medium density, so that would just follow whatever the code did, right? We didn't want to do a number.
Yeah, we specifically struck the number.
And I just,
Although you are missing a period there. At the very top hanging part on page 19,
and at the end of 5B4.
where it says residential medium
At the very top of
intensity,
page
very, very
19.
top of page 19.
No.
Oh, top of 19.
There you
Oh,
go.
okay, there.
Period there. And it looks like you're also missing a period on 5B4 on that highlighted language.
Geez, Corey, these guys are changing me. You also need a space after the hyphen at the beginning of title of 5B4, public review restrictions, space hyphen, and then your hyphens on 5B6 and 7 are larger than the other ones, so if you could just,
Change them from M dashes to hyphens
on
and
me.
we're good.
It hasn't been proofread.
All right.
If you're
Okay,
down to looking at periods, I'm excited
He's
and
happy.
elated.
okay. So I want to step back now because I think that this is a strategic decision that we need to make as a planning commission. And that is the question of whether we send this to the city council with sections 5A or 5B. So let's talk first just about 5A. So this is only going to be whether we want to put up the idea of essentially, I mean, I know I'm summarizing here, but essentially, do we want to allow for ADU type units along the commercial
And mixed use.
corridor and mixed use? And I'd like to invite discussion on that. Go. Anyone?
Go.
Why don't you tell us your thoughts?
yeah, I want to see where Shaylin.
What?
You remember that time you came
Isn't
out with
this-
the charge and you're like,
Isn't this the beauty of being the chair is that I get to sit back and
She said go.
relate? You know, I have to admit, on this piece, allowing some small ADU type things, like where maybe somebody throws a small apartment on top, to me, that doesn't change the character of the commercial corridor. It's still primarily commercial, which is where I think it needs to be. So, and I think that Corey raises an excellent point. Me, as somebody has harped on the lack of affordable housing, I still think that there are places in our city where we can incorporate that in a way that doesn't change the character of our community, and maybe even better places than along Main Street to incorporate additional housing that doesn't change the character of our community. All that being said, I mean, I don't think that if we include this section that we're going to be adding that many units along Main Street, and it won't change the character of the commercial nature, and it will at least address in some small extent possibly the issue of affordable housing. So I personally am in favor of, and we know that the city council, several members have expressed a favorable attitude towards this one. I am inclined to go ahead and allow us to send up, I would be in favor of sending up 5A.
You know, something that you said earlier, Kevin, was really, I liked what you said about the housing chain. Like, when you think of an affordable car, if you think of a new car, you're crazy. When you think of an affordable car, you think of a used car. So when we think of affordable housing, the chain makes a ton of sense. The new stuff tends to not be affordable, but it's, you know, as it ages a little bit, you get a little more affordability. With that in mind, I think we should include 5B and send it to the council, not only to be bold in our advocacy to solve the housing rights issue and provide new housing so that other housing can come down the chain, but also knowing that they can axe that easily, 5B, and just to show them what we kind of spitballed and let them listen to this discussion and just say, here's what we thought, you know, we don't know if you guys are going to like it or not, but, you know, Corey put time into this and it might be worth their consideration, and who knows, maybe they'll do it.
So I assume then that you are in favor of 5A.
And 5B.
And 5B.
Okay,
Thank
no,
you.
I get that.
Yeah.
I'm trying to focus this in right now on 5A.
I am so sorry.
On
I
5A,
missed that.
Logan?
Yeah.
No, it's okay. I think your comments are good. How does everybody else feel about 5A? Let's just focus on 5A
I
first.
like 5A. I think it's.
5A.
beneficial.
I think that 5A the idea of 5A has grown on me. As we've talked more about this in general, and we've talked more about how this would work, I can support 5A. I think I like the idea of having these accessory units and a secondary use as residential, so
Sure.
I'm okay with it.
Isaac, Becky?
So I mean, what I see or what I think we're envisioning here, just to see if we're all on the same page, is, you know, the shop owner or like our OBGYN for our first few kids. He lived in his office. It was he had an area where he lived in it, and it worked. And that's kind of what we're talking about here. That's the vision of what we're talking about, right? And I think that's great. I am very supportive of this going up as well too. I think it facilitates or fosters, encourages the kind of growth we're looking for. These community-oriented services. It does provide additional housing options, and it's an opportunity for someone to come in and put their business and their house basically in the same place. And I think it encourages a good look, right? I mean, people, if they're living there, they're probably, I mean, it's their business, they live there. Maybe we won't have as many, maybe we will have more owner-occupied businesses, right? And I think that it could encourage some lasting good looks on that corridor. I support it.
Okay. Becky?
Corey, could you give me some off the top of your head real numbers on the amount of units that would be allowed in any one of the areas any one of the lots or, you know, commercial
I
spot?
don't think I could. This is the debate I had with a former citizen, now council member. You know, the idea of if I took every parcel and assumed redevelopment with this number, then I would come up with probably something significant. But I contest that not every owner and not every parcel is going to be developed this way. It's going to meet the needs of whoever owns the building and what they're trying to accomplish. You're going to have a much lower significant number of units. And to venture to guess on who's going to do that and how many units, it's a little hard to project.
I understand that, and I asked you that because I imagined that a city council member was going to ask you that exact question. So why don't, instead of the full amount, can you consider just for a second what would be the largest lot or the largest structure, and possibly just brainstorm really quickly so that
Well,
we know.
yeah, your
what
largest
we're-
structure is 10,000 square foot. That's your maximum, so you're
Okay.
at 40% of that building.
So that would be,
4,000 square feet.
and that would give us,
2 or 3, maybe 4 at most.
Yeah, it depends on how big your bedrooms are and what you're trying to accomplish.
like four units
Of 1,000 square feet.
of 1,000 square feet each, and that would be for your largest structure.
But we're
on
limiting
Main
it,
Street.
in 5A5, we limit to 3 dwelling units per commercial lot.
Right. So you're down to 3.
would be the
So 3 is the most, regardless of the commercial parcel's definitive size, like it says. 3 dwelling units are the absolute most that anyone could get on that lot.
Yeah.
So we just need to make sure that if this is something that we send up to the council, that is communicated strongly.
Yeah, and the
So
difference, I
that there
think,
isn't like a hypothetical,
yeah, and I think the difference is before the plan sits today, adjusted in density, it talked about 3 units per building. And so the issue is how many buildings could be constructed.
okay,
This is 3 units for the commercial lot. The maximum size is a 10,000 square foot building. So now you're talking about, you know, the element was, we could have 900 units on Main Street.
right,
If everything was
right.
redeveloped, and I only calculated like 400 in a max. So I still- Previously, even though
Yes.
the 900 was put out there, I
Yes.
was like, this is only 400.
That's what I'm trying to
in
get to.
Extreme. This one's even more restricted, because now you're talking about per commercial lot, no more than 3 units.
So how many, let's just do a hypothetical here.
You're about 4, total, including slivers, you're about 40 parcels on Main Street.
40 parcels, and they won't all get 3 on them.
No, because there's really small ones and a few large ones. And then you have slivers, so you're probably down to around 35 legitimately sized pieces of property. And
So some of them are not even a
now you're going
half
to
acre.
deal with, okay, I want to put a 10,000 square foot building, but can I get the parking, the landscaping, and all those requirements to get to the 10,000 square feet? Probably not.
Okay, I just want us to be aware of if someone comes back and says, you can put hundreds of
Yeah.
properties, hundreds of residential properties on Main Street, that we know what we're talking about and we can accurately say, actually, because
yeah.
of these restrictions that we've placed on the lot size, the dwelling on the lot size, as well as the dwellings per commercial lot, as well as the size of the
building.
dwelling, the building that is allowed on the lot, we can say these things very clearly to the city council or anyone else if this is something that we're putting in. If we're putting in mixed use, has been a buzzword in previous years and has been, if you're
Correct.
talking temperature of the city, has been a buzzword that has caused some drama. So if we are aware of exactly how many we are potentially putting on there, we just need to be aware of that before we send it up.
The good news in this discussion is that I think that we all agree that 5A is going to be in here and we're going to include it to go up. So now here is the, in my mind, the more
Million-dollar question.
interesting question, which is whether we include 5B. And I will go ahead and lead off on this one just to get my thoughts out there. I am not in favor of including multifamily residential infill and redevelopment along Main Street, only because not that I do not support multifamily residential in our city. I just think that if our vision is that it's going to be primarily a commercial corridor, that's where I think we need to pick a pony. And so I am inclined to not be supportive of that. That being said, I don't have any objections in sending it up to the city council if they disagree with us and they decide that that's the direction that they want to go. So like include it like it is optional language, but I am not in favor of actually including it in the plan.
And not to steal from the other commissioners, please, I'm not trying to interrupt that you put your two pin in, but
Yep.
let me just, one alternative as a part of this that's not written in here.
Okay,
Cook site and O'Brien site are your largest development parcels that are severely underutilized for the sizes that they are. So the balance says if it's not multifamily infill, and this is the whole discussion, corridor wide, is there room, and that's what you debate, is to narrow to the south end, like we talked about to the north end, and use it for those larger pieces as a gateway into the corridor. Because the issue that I'm struggling with is what are you going to reuse those large properties for? And the issue could be 10 years, we might find something that infills those properties. But I'm just saying at this point in time, two severely underutilized pieces of property, if you were going to use this, it could be tailored and narrowed to be just that gate area in reverse of what we were turned down for the north side.
So I'd say, Corey, that's a good thought. Thanks for the idea. I don't like it.
Just throwing it out there.
Yeah, I agree with what Shaylin says about it, that, we need to go, this goes back to maybe my comment about we need to be all in or all out on residential, and I don't think that we need to be careful with not losing all of our commercial areas, and if we were to just say, yeah, here's multifamily residential, it becomes residential and it never, ever goes back the other way, ever. So, yeah, I think that we can send it up, and maybe we send it up to the city council with, even how we feel about it, like, yeah, we all support this, or we only half support this, or we half support that, or whatever.
Or per your instructions,
Sure.
we have looked at residential components.
Yeah, but then
And
furthermore.
here are some options.
Yeah, but then furthermore, here's, as a planning commission, 5-2, we support this section, and whatever, we support this section. I don't know, I'm throwing.
And remember, you're going to have a work session at the city council. So.
Right, so I let out, and obviously Kevin he's on my side, yay. But how does anybody else feel about this one? I mean, do you support including it? If you were city council, would you vote for it?
No, I wouldn't. We go through this thoughtful plan and we've spent all this time working on the nuances of the words and the feels of our South Main Street corridor and its commercial applications. And then at the end of this, we have a full-scale identity crisis. And we create this avenue for kind of a Wild West development situation, which I couldn't oppose more. I think I wouldn't vote for it as a council member. I think that it is not what the future of Centerville City should look like. I think it creates all kinds of issues. And I don't think we should send it up. I think that the residential component is reflected in the ADU uses. And I think that we should be clear, if this is how we feel as a commission, and it looks like maybe 3 of us are feeling that way at least, that that's what we are thinking. And I think that we should pass that along, and by pass it along, I mean not pass it along, because I don't think it's a good idea.
Good point.
All right, how about that end of the dais?
I would hate to include these people on the end, or go ahead. No, or, yeah, so
It's not like ends, we're not like,
yeah, this is the left wing.
we're not like right here. I'm just saying that now, like, we're
Careful.
not, just so everyone is aware.
No. I'm totally jesting.
Yeah, I think whatever the commission is comfortable with sending up, as this is what we want as the ordinance, is what we should send up.
Okay.
I'm comfortable adding it. I like getting in my saddle and heading out to the Wild West of 6 units an acre and going gangbusters, you know? And I'm comfortable sending it up. But I don't think the commission should send it up to say, you know, if we want city council to look at it, we can vote on what we like and then say, and then Corey, you could say, oh, here was this thing that was in it. It's not what they recommended. But
Well, you'll have a work session with them.
Sure.
And you can
Sure.
tell them what you debated.
yeah, but I'd encourage you guys to get your 6 shooters and your holsters and join me. But.
What do you think?
I think it's tough. There's, I kind of like what you said, Isaac. Like, for part of me is like, yes, I can see this happening. Do I like it? But it does really contradict almost everything else we're putting forth in this whole plan, and I don't know. It's tough. Do I think that it's hard, because I think that it will create a lot of development along Main Street and it will revitalize it, but is it the type that we want? Because I do think that if we allow multifamily to be there, it will go, and it will be developed. And is that the right path, or do we kind of hold back and say, are we okay with saying it? Maybe it will take 20 years to get to where we want, but would we rather have that in 20 years than the multifamily? And it's tough. I don't know. I'm more of a, this is what I think is going to happen. Let's make sure that it's right and get it done right. But I don't know. I'm still kind of on that fence a little bit. But it does go against everything else we've kind of put forth. So it's a little contradictory to that. So I don't know. Becca, what do you think?
In general, I'm not opposed to multifamily residential. I don't think that multifamily development is inherently bad or is inherently the wrong decision. I think that too often it is used as a tool, a scare tactic for people to think that everything's changing and who knows what's going to happen. I don't think that generally. That being said, I am holding really strong to the desire to support our local community commercial owners. I've said this kind of all along, I really want to, I would love to see like a Centerville Chamber of Commerce or something where we value the Centerville local business owner, and we see their value in our community, not just tax dollars, but in the look and feel of our community. And that being said, while maybe allowing multifamily residential would give them like more money to redevelop, that doesn't necessarily support my goal of making this a locally owned locally driven commercial historic center for our city. So I'm not in favor of it because of that, not because I'm against multifamily, but because I hope that we have a strong vision for this area, and that is to support and revitalize that commercial area.
I want to add one other thought. If our goal is to get this thing through, and I think that it is, we spent a lot of time and effort in trying to put this through, and I think we've done a good job of trying to balance vision against what we think the community desires would be, right? I mean, I think that we've tried to strike that balance. My concern, if we include this even as an optional component, as I've been sitting here listening to all of you, is that if we send it up that way, that's what's gonna go out in the community. That's what people are gonna respond to. That's what they're gonna react to. That's what the city council members are gonna hear. And it may taint all of the other good work that we've done by including that one. I love the way that you call it the identity crisis piece here at the end. So I've been persuaded by your comments that I think that we should just take out 5B altogether and send it up with just 5A.
And I will say, I actually think that 5A could potentially do exactly what you were saying too. I hope it doesn't, but it could go out into the community and cause, unless we're able to, as commissioners, communicate directly to the city council and to the people around us, really communicate what in actual units and in actual what this looks like, because we got to push back against any kind of rumors that what it could look like. We got to make sure that that's not something that takes the discussion over what this whole plan is. So I just think we need to be aware that that could possibly happen in 5A.
So I've got some thoughts on that, but I
Yeah.
don't want to share them yet. I want to plow through 5B. I want to.
Okay, so are we good on 5? Does everybody agree then? I think that it sounds like we have a fairly decent consensus, and we remove 5B.
I'm in favor of removing 5B and not sending it up.
Okay,
Me too.
So I'll remove it, and if you ever add it back, you have to propose an amendment to add it back in.
fair enough.
That's fine.
Hey, but we've got the language drafted. We'll just keep it for a rainy day.
Put that one next to the flag lot ordinance.
Do you want to share your comment about 5A?
Yeah, just throwing this out there. This is kind of spitballing, but to maybe alleviate some of those concerns, do we want to consider some sort of, because if the vision, again, is to encourage these small community-oriented businesses and things and give people an opportunity to be close to their business, would it alleviate concerns to maybe consider some sort of owner occupancy?
I don't think we need that. I don't think that that's going to be necessary to make this work.
I'd like it.
But here's why I think that so we have a work session coming up, I don't know when, with the city council, and we can sit down with the city council and say, hey, there were some of you who suggested this. Is this what you had in mind? And if not, now's your chance to tweak it, right? Okay, great. So this is your idea, you know? And it really is, in a lot of ways, their idea, not necessarily ours. We might have had that one, but it really grew out of that initial work session we had with them.
Are we going to have a work session with them before we send this out for public comment?
Yeah, so that's what I mean. We'll have that work session. That'll be our chance to fine tune or tweak it at that
And
point.
they get to make the decision which goes out to the public.
Yeah,
Right.
it's their baby.
Yeah, I mean, I think that if we put owner occupied on it, it's going to constrict it to the point that you really won't see any go up, and it would constrain your ability to rent it out to your kids in college or
Yeah,
to their. I mean,
it does become cumbersome. There's no question that. it
Well, I don't
does.
know that we would have, if it was something that you wanted, it wouldn't have to be a shall. It could be an
I don't
option.
know. I just, so I lived in Provo for a number of years, and it was just crazy how the different ways they would try to limit and restrict, and, you know, your first cousins. If it was first cousins, it was okay, kind of thing. And if it was once removed, it wasn't. And it just got kind of nutty. And so that's why I prefaced it with we're spitballing here.
Yeah.
But I like the idea of working through these issues in a work
Yeah.
session, so.
I would say let's not limit it yet.
Yes.
There you go.
And then if we can talk through that issue with the city council.
Yeah, that's why I was saying I don't think that's necessary
Yeah.
because we can work through it with the city council.
Yeah, I think This has been a tremendous amount of work. I want to thank all of you, and I really want to thank Corey.
Yes.
For doing the laboring or on this.
Yeah,
and
I'm glad you
Mackenzie.
have the tolerance level to read all the way through and absorb it and debate it and see how it
Find all
sounds
those
to you.
periods and spaces.
You know,
I thought it was very helpful to read through it all once,
I agree.
like start to finish. So, and I actually did that again this afternoon just to kind of make sure that I had it fresh, and it was very helpful.
Well, I'll fix some of those and you'll see the draft again, but the question is I'm ready to go with the overlay ordinance.
Okay.
Okay.
So do you want to start that at your next meeting?
Yeah, although I think we can do both. I think the number of substantive changes that you're making to what we've discussed today, well, we spent a lot of time on it. I think the actual substantive changes are gonna be relatively minor, so let's go ahead and tee up both.
Yes.
Yeah, let's go ahead and keep it working. For what it's worth, I mean, I'm not trying to reopen anything with regard to paragraph 2 on page 1, but the way I see it, you know, the City Council and Planning Commission 5 years ago, they tried an approach, right, to revitalize it. And their approach was to go, let's revitalize it through high density. And that clearly was not something that our community supported. And so now we've gone a different direction. We've said, okay, look, we hear you. You don't support it that way. Now we're gonna try to revitalize that area by opening up more business opportunities. And you know what? Maybe at the end of the day, we're wrong. Maybe we throw it out and the community really doesn't like it. But I view our role as I mean, it's why I love local government, where we get to experiment, we get to try things, you know, and I don't expect us to get it right. We try our best to get it perfect the first time, but, you know, we're not always gonna make it perfect. So we try to do the best we can, and if it doesn't work, then we try again and try
Right,
again. We experiment.
I've been here maybe too long,
Yeah.
it's, 15 years here, but the uses on Main Street commercially have been angst of the local community for a long time.
Yeah.
And so I'm leery that commercial development, opening up, again, I don't want to stop you from opening it up, but my warning in advance is that the uses on Main Street, the addition of cut bop is a failure politically in this community. It's used time and time again. It's being used to talk about in the election. And I just see restaurants, the truck parking issues with the cut bop, the vehicle sales that would bring in a greater generated revenue in auto sales than the entire uses do on Main Street. And it is the biggest angst in the community to have that car lot there.
But we haven't opened it up
But
for
those
car
are,
lots.
both are, those,
Yeah.
both car lot and restaurant, not cup op, but both of those are non-conforming uses to the overlay.
But that's what you were opening back up is, what the community threat is if the door opens too much, it may not be the car dealership now, but it'll be this concern.
Yeah, but if a cup op part of the reason that cup op is so unsuccessful there is because we forced that into we said, yeah, you can do it, but you can't sell out of it, and you can't make it a restaurant where people are actually gonna show up. It's essentially just gonna be a place where you make your food, so of course it's not a successful place. I think it would be an entirely different question if cup op was great and it opened it up and I could walk over and I could feed my family and people were coming there, they wouldn't be parking their trucks out in the front. They'd be generating more revenue. The building would look,
Yeah,
it
but
would be very
the
spiffy.
residents behind complained about any restaurant use there.
And that complaint would go up by an order of magnitude if you had a heavy use restaurant.
I doubt it though, because
Have they complained since cup op went in?
Thanks, Lefty.
because it's a restaurant. But is anybody actually smelling anything?
Yes.
But here's the thing.
And that's what ran the hairdresser out.
But see,
Really?
I agree with Shaylin on that one, that if it were a restaurant, then the lightning rod issues there would not even be issues.
Yeah, but Jade Hill's a restaurant there. And it was a problem in the community.
Well, I don't know.
I don't know if restaurant would be.
But that's, the problem
I'm
is that everybody's-
just pointing out, I think as you look at the use list, you're gonna get a significant amount of pushback
oh, we already have.
overall.
But see, the thing about it is we also got a lot of support for the expanded use list. We got a lot of support from an expanded use list. So the
And
thing about it is I think that the with Cup Op specifically, the issues that I've heard are the trucks and the parking of the trucks. Yeah, but those wouldn't be an issue if that were a restaurant. I promise they wouldn't be. That's the thing is, That's one of the
Well,
great things about any level of
but I think
government
you
is
see that, but Jade
misinformation.
Hill was a restaurant that people complained about.
But there were no trucks. And that's
Right,
what
but they
everybody's
complained
complaining-
about the restaurant
But that's what
use.
everybody's complaining about now is the trucks.
Yeah, and then they'll complain about the restaurant use, and they'll complain about the
You just
whatever
have a
use.
job, unfortunately, where you have to hear a lot of complaints.
Yeah, oh, it's not just complaints, it's the issue of how far can the community tolerate change?
Some members of the community.
Well, I think that we are on the right track.
Yeah.
Again, we may not be perfect. We may have to come back and revisit. We probably will have to come back and revisit. But I think that we have made an admirable strive in trying to improve Main Street. So I commend all of you for
Yeah,
all of your efforts.
don't let me be a naysayer, I'm just,
Corey, we have, as you can see, we have no problems pushing back on you. So it's all good. All right. As fun as this discussion has been, is everybody okay to move forward with the subdivision ordinance, or do we want to take a 2-minute break?
Let's move forward.
You all okay? All right, let's do it. Let's get through these. Item number 3, subdivision ordinance updates. Lisa.
Okay, thank you. Your next chapter in the subdivision ordinance review is chapter 17 regarding the public improvements. We're not actually at chapter 17 because I added a few, so this used to be chapter 14. We have to go back and infill with a few, but I didn't have time to actually draft those. So this chapter actually already exists in your code as chapter 7 of Title 15, and it's just called public improvements, but basically it's helping developers understand sort of the city engineer involvement with the construction plans for the public improvements, what standards apply to those, how they need to submit the construction plans, and then also that we have a pre-construction meeting and inspections. So as I said, most of this is already in your code. It's just cleaned up a little bit. We did add the last provision on as-built plans, which seemed applicable, and also the section regarding monuments, which is another thing that the city engineer looks at when dealing with public improvements. So when we get through all of these chapters, you know, it may be that we put some other references to chapter 5, which is all the requirements. So there are a lot more requirements regarding public improvements and impact fees and other things, but this chapter, the intent is really to help the city engineer and the developer say, these are the kinds of, what we need for the construction drawings. So you have the plat, and then you have the construction drawings, and that's really the city engineer. So like we do, luckily this is only 3 pages, so we'll start with page 1. If you have any comments or typos on page 1. I may retitle the first section just to the standards and specifications to try and be consistent with that. Anything on page 2? And then page 3. I will admit I picked an easy one because I was out of town and trying to dig myself out of that, but this was a pretty easy one. So.
Thank you very much, Lisa. Item number 4 on our community, or is our community development director's report and city council report. Corey.
so we do have some items scheduled for your next meeting. I'm trying to remember which ones qualify. But we do have an item to go with you, and then we'd start the policy drafting of the overlay.
And we'll also bring back this one.
Yeah, and there's nothing from the council relevant to planning recommendations.
Great. And last item on our agenda, our September 11 minutes. We'll do this in the ordinary course, page by page. If you have any comments, let me know, page 1. Okay, here's a question, and I ask this of you because I did not go back and listen to the recording. It says a majority of the planning, I'm looking at page 30, or at line 37. A majority of the planning commission expressed support for including section 5 in the SMSC plan. Now, is that really true? Because I think that we said we're willing to look at it for potential discussion, but this makes it sound like we were in favor of including a whole residential component, and I thought that there
Including
was some
section 5 for
discussion.
review.
And what?
including section 5 for
Why don't you
review.
put for review? in there?
Yeah, I think I think
Not
that's the thing
including
that's
it in
missing.
the plan.
Right. That was, when I read it, I went, no, I'm pretty sure, well, there was some debate about whether we included it or
Well,
not.
and even including it for review, the debate was limited to, I mean, we're going to have this in red, and it's an option, and, yeah, we were very circumspect on how that went up.
What if we
And also
put for
that-
for
potential
consideration.
inclusion?
Yeah, that's good.
Well, and that's also when we talked about splitting section 5, because it was
Yeah.
our last meeting that we actually split
Yeah,
out
we
the
actually did
multifamily
split
part
it.
of it.
I would say, let's change it to read this way then. A majority of the planning commission expressed support for potentially including section 5 in the SMSC plan. I still don't know that I love that, but it's better than what it was before. Any other comments on page 1? Page 2. Chair will entertain a motion.
I move to accept the minutes of the September 11th, 2019 Planning Commission as amended.
Second.
It's been moved and seconded. All those in favor?
Aye.
Any opposed? And I move that we adjourn.
Second.
All those in favor?
Aye.
Any opposed?